because not be warrants, but more information is, if information is key in this business, they can look in the Varuna system through the computer in their car and find out, what's this person's history with OCPD? Is there a bunch of reports been made? Is there a bunch of contacts that we've had with them? Are those things documented? Who am I dealing with? That's available to them as well. Huh, interesting. That's exactly how Daniel used it. You'd think he would be making that sound more nefarious right now.
Yeah, exactly. But he's
maybe he's just too dumb right now.
He's too dumb all the time. Yeah, that's exactly what Daniel did. But they, like I said a few minutes ago, they used it against him.
You're going to hear about... Was Alice chiming in? I cut her off. No. Oh. Okay. You're going to hear about activity logs that officers are told to maintain during their shifts. Basically, what are you doing? We're going to hear from supervisors. Ryan Boxwell will be one of them with the Oklahoma City Police Department, a captain in the Spring Lake Division who supervises the patrol officers. I think he supervises day shift, but he'll tell you about that. He'll tell you about that. What we want to do is essentially one officer in a car patrolling. They kind of have a lot of discretion as to how they work or what they do. They're on their own. That's what we want them to do. We want them to be out there. We want them to be patrolling. We want them to see if they come up on things. We want to see that they're working. They have a log, a daily activity log that the officers either write in or type in their computer that generates where they are and what they've done throughout the day. I mentioned field interview cards a little while ago. You're going to hear about field interview cards. A field interview card is just that. It's a card. And the officers are encouraged that when you're out on patrol and you come in contact with someone who you think might be up to no good, you think you maybe have probable cause to think there's reasons that these people are engaged in maybe criminal activity, fill out a card on them. Write their name, write their identifiers, write where they are, write what they told you they were doing whenever you have these voluntary contacts with people. So we figured out, and we can put it into our Varuna system, okay? And not only look at actual police reports that are made, but if you run into someone and you look and there's been 15 field interview cards where they're saying they're living at this address, but they just told you they live somewhere else, you know maybe there's something up, and you're not getting accurate information. It is an information gathering tool. It's what police officers do. You're going to hear about that as well. You're going to hear about, I should point this out, the evidence is going to show that on June 18th, 2014, at approximately, well, a little bit after 2 a.m., Daniel Holtzclaw did not have his AVL system turned on. GPS was off. Computer was shut down. When he came in contact with Janie Liggins on this DUI stop, he did not call in the CAD call and say, hey, I'm going out on a car at 2 a.m. I think it's a drunk driver. I want the dispatch to know I'm stepping away from my vehicle and coming into contact with someone. He didn't do that. He did not call the crime information unit whenever he got Janie Liggins' information and she told him who she was. He did not call and say, does Miss Liggins have warrants? Do I need to take her into custody because she's driving in an erratic manner, and I want to know if there's a warrant outstanding? He didn't do that. What a clown.
He also did not say she was driving erratic. He said, I saw you swerve. That, again, another little thing. It might sound really small, but that's not what he said. He said swerve. Now Giger is saying erratic.
Do I need to take her into custody because she's driving in an erratic manner, and I want to know if there's a warrant outstanding? What? Okay.
Oh man,
He's
just
like that.
He's just an idiot. He really is. And even if you listen to him talk like on a news report or something, he's just an idiot. But
oh my God, that clown's in the Attorney General's office now.
Yeah, I know. That's so frightening. Really quickly, I want to say hello to Jack, and he's also streaming on Foul Play's YouTube. So I want to say welcome to everybody in Foul Play as well for tuning in and watching. So Jack, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And all I'll say is that naps are really underrated.
Yeah, man.
What are really underrated?
Naps.
Naps.
Oh, naps.
Yeah. And sometimes you intend for an hour.
Yeah.
And it goes well beyond that.
Hey, it's a holiday.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. So welcome to everybody in Foul Play and to everybody who's joined on my chat. And there's a gentleman here. I'm assuming it's a gentleman, Arto. He is from Finland and all that area in that part of the country. So welcome. I've not met you in our chat before, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. And hello, Joris. Okay, carry on.
He did not check the Varuna system on Janie Liggins. He did not do any of the things an officer is expected to do whenever you come in contact with a suspected drunk driver. You're going to hear in this case again, probably from Captain Boxwell, about the cultural and societal problems that exist on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. This is a captain who is involved in community communications, goes to churches on the northeast side, some of the black churches, deals with the concerns of the citizens over there. He's going to tell you that what is somewhat different about Spring Lake is that the officers who are on patrol in that division don't respond to as many calls as the officers in Hefner Division or other divisions around Oklahoma City Police Department. He will tell you that that is because people who live on the northeast side of Oklahoma City by percentages don't call the police as often. He'll talk to you about what he believes some of those reasons are. The attitudes toward the police, the attitudes toward law enforcement in general. He's going to talk to you about the socioeconomic depression on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. He's going to talk to you about how there are many, many people who live on the northeast side that his officers come into contact with who are addicted to drugs. If they're not addicted to drugs, they are certainly exposed to that kind of lifestyle on a daily basis. They're exposed to an area of town that is a high crime volume, whether it's drugs, whether it's prostitution, whether it's burglaries, whether it's violent crime. It is unfortunately a part of day-to-day life. Many of the people who live in that part of our city will hear you will hear don't have steady jobs. They don't have calendars. They don't keep track of time. Their day runs into a cycle of doing the same type of things just to kill time over and over again. And it is a problem for the Oklahoma City police officer to Oklahoma City Police Department to properly serve that part of our community for a variety of reasons. That is the part of town this defendant had been assigned to patrol, but the story didn't start on June 18th, 2014. To tell you about the rest of this evidence in this case, I need to back up. Let's back up about 7 months. December of 2013. You're going to hear testimony from a young lady from Shardarion Hill. Shardarion Hill was involved in a high crime area in drug-related activities on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. You're going to hear about an apartment complex and regarding several of these young ladies called Liberty Station. It's a large apartment complex at the 27th and Lindsay part of Oklahoma City. It's a high crime apartment complex, lots of drug activity, lots of stuff going on. On December 20th of 2014, 2013 he means, Shardarion Hill was with a friend of hers in a vehicle, and the police came up on her. They had drugs. They had PCP. Other officers responded. This defendant was one of the officers that responded as well. Again, 7 months, give or take a few days. Well, actually, 7 months, give or take 2 days before Janie Liggins. He responded during the traffic stop. Miss Hill will tell you how she tried to ingest the PCP and she spilled it on her clothes, and because of that, it became a health issue. They were concerned about how that was going to react, how her body was reacting to that, so an ambulance was called. The decision was made to transport her to Southwest Medical Center, kind of down southwest part of Oklahoma City. An ambulance transported her and Officer Holtzclaw. She was under arrest because of the drug possession. Officer Holtzclaw left the other officers dealing with the other suspect and the other things going on. His job was to follow her to the hospital and stay with her until she could be medically cleared, and then transported to the Oklahoma County Jail and booked in on the drug charges. Shardarion Hill will tell you how whenever she arrived at the hospital, they basically deloused her. What the hell? Deloused?
Yeah, that's a real thing, actually.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why I thought that was, well, I won't get into all that since I'm incorrect. Sorry, Galen, you were right once.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make him be right, but it is a thing.
Deloused. Well, you learn something new every day. They have an area where they sprayed her off. They took her clothes from her because of the drug contamination, and they dressed her in a hospital gown. Then they hooked her up to monitors and put her in a room and monitored her condition for about 6 hours. I anticipate you're going to see the medical records. I anticipate you're going to see the AVL, because on that day in December, this defendant had his AVL, his automatic vehicle locator, on, and it shows him going to Southwest Medical Center, just like she says. Well, just like he said too.
Yeah.
Like, oh. Over the 6 hours that she is there, she is placed in a room that's off the main traffic of the ER. The doctors understand she's going to be there for a while. They kind of move her out of the area, and she is placed in a room that's kind of down off the main beaten path. In that room, she's hooked up to the monitors, and this defendant is charged with staying there with her until she's medically cleared. You'll hear that how over the course of that time he begins to talk to her, and she will tell you about how, as she's still coming out of her high off from the drugs, she will be sitting in the bed, moving in the bed, and the defendant would say repeatedly, "Your breasts are exposed because of a loose gown." But then she will tell you that as she is there in that hospital, that he on 3 different occasions during that 6-hour time period reaches over and actually touches her breasts as he's talking to her about her charges, talking to her about going to jail. Eventually, you'll hear how the conversation goes to him actually as he continues to touch her body, inserting his fingers into her vagina. Then you will hear, as the conversation continues, that he, similarly to Janie Liggins, exposes his penis and demands that she perform oral sex, and she does. She does. Eventually, she is medically cleared. She's then transported by the man who just sexually assaulted her to the Oklahoma County Jail. He is booking her into the Oklahoma County Jail. As promised, he doesn't put the outstanding warrants on her as well when he books her in. That's part of the conversation you'll hear about in the hospital. He puts her in on the drug charges, but he doesn't increase her bond by adding the outstanding warrants that she has as well. Shardarion Hill has got problems. She does. She's booked in and time goes on. You'll also hear that during the weeks that followed, Shardarion Hill has a Facebook account, and the defendant, under his name, begins to contact her and sends friend requests to her on Facebook. There's some communication back and forth, and I anticipate you will see those Facebook messages back and forth. You will also, I anticipate, see the phone records of the defendant, and you will see that the defendant is not only contacting this drug-addicted felon on Facebook, he's also contacting her through text messaging and back and forth. There's some days of contact, and then time goes by, and then contact is reinitiated. The Facebook messages you will see talk about the same things that she will tell you he was talking to her about in the hospital, and that is, hey, let's take care of these warrants. You need to get this done. You need to let me help you do this type of conversations. She'll tell you that she did not want to perform oral sex. She will tell you that she did not want to have his fingers inserted into her vagina. She will tell you that she did not want her breasts fondled by this officer, but she is under arrest, and what is she supposed to do? You'll judge her credibility. Yeah. That's not the end of it with Shardarion. No. She will say that about 3 weeks later, on January 9th of 2014, after the Christmas holidays, she's receiving again text messages from this defendant. You will see the phone records. He's off duty. It's part of that 8-day on, 6-day off time period. He's off duty. But he comes over to her house, which is located on Northeast 81st Street. Again, still over in that part of town. This time, not in his police car, but she will say he comes over to her house. He's texting her to come out. Her children are home with her. She doesn't want to do this with him at her house with her kids there. Finally, she goes out. He's not in a police car. He's in his personal car. She will describe what kind of car that was. You will hear that eventually Detective Rocky Gregory runs an OLETS search. It is a computer automated system that keeps track of vehicle registrations in Oklahoma. If you own a car, you're in there. And it tells what kind of car it is. And coincidentally, it's the exact kind of personal car that Daniel K. Holtzclaw owns that the defendant describes at her house in January. He has her come out. She says, I'm not doing this. He wants oral sex and or sex. I'm not doing this. My kids are in that house. He eventually exposes his penis, and in an attempt, she will tell you, to try to get her to perform a sex act on him. And she does it. She's done. She walks away from it.
I have a question. Well, I don't have, it's not a question. It's a point, something to point out. He's not in a police car, right? So
Right.
what is her fear at that point? She can't claim that she was felt threatened by him because he might take her to jail. You know, it's just, it's a little bit of a reach for him to say that, you know, she just goes out there and says, well, fine, I don't want to do this, but I'll do it anyway, and now just leave. For what reason? You know, I mean, we know the reasons, I know the reasons, but it's just something to think about. Before, it was because she was afraid, he was in uniform, all that stuff. He was a cop and had his gun belt on, and what was I supposed to do? Well, what's the excuse now? What's the reason now? You just don't go out of the house. Just stay in the house, you know?
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you know, Galen in his opening makes it sound like Daniel's going to have his AVL, his GPS off commonly.
Right. Yeah.
He's not saying, hey, that's the only time it was ever turned off. Now he's in his personal car going by there. He didn't, I mean, he admitted to doing that. There was no tracker on him. I guess that his cell phone could have been tracked, but it wasn't something that he thought about before, you know, explaining the whole Shardarion Hill story.
Yeah.
We'll hear from Scott Adams, Daniel's side, hopefully, of this part.
Hopefully.
See.
Okay,
you're also going to hear about another lady who has lots of problems named Tabitha Barnes. Tabitha Barnes lives, or at least lived, in February and March of 2014 at the intersection of Northeast 15th Street and Jordan. It's a high crime, high drug area in the Spring Lake Division of the Oklahoma City Police Department. Several of the ladies that I'm going to tell you about in the next few minutes revolved around that part of the city, that Northeast 15th and Jordan location. Tabitha will tell you that on February 27th of 2014, she and a friend of hers named Angela Cooper had been somewhere. They came back to her house. They're on the corner of Northeast 15th and Jordan, the house she was living in at the time. It's a drug house. I don't know if she'll admit that or not, but it's right in the middle of drug activity. I think he really didn't mean to say that, did he?
Yeah. Probably not.
Because he's right. It was a drug house.
It was a drug house.
Another lady I'm going to tell you about later named Florina Mathis, or Florine Mathis for people who know the accusers, will tell you she has spent the night in that house. She loosely knows Tabitha. That's the lifestyle.
She's an associate.
Right. She's my dealer, man. Tabitha had her children living in that house as well. She did not.
No, she didn't. Well, the little girls, the two girls, but the oldest one did not live with her.
I don't think that's true. I think they were visiting. Am I wrong about that?
No, you could be right. It's hard to remember Tabitha's story because it is so twisted and bizarre.
Yeah,
So you're probably right.
I think so. Okay. But on this day, a traffic stop was made. Another officer named Ivan Venegas responds as well. Ivan Venegas deals with Angela Cooper, Tabitha Barnes' friend. He puts her in his car and is dealing with her. Tabitha Barnes is placed into the defendant's patrol car, and he is dealing with her. Venegas will tell you that after he talks with Miss Cooper, he runs her in the system, finds out she has no warrants, and he says, okay, there's nothing I can do, and go inside. And she goes inside. The children have gone inside the house. Venegas leaves. His AVL, his automatic vehicle locator, shows him there. It shows him leaving. The defendant has his on as well. He's there. He runs her through the different units. You'll hear about the different types of evidence you'll receive. You'll see what was said about it. You'll see she comes back clear. She doesn't have any warrants. Tabitha Barnes doesn't. Venegas has left. She's still there. She will tell you. She's still there. She will tell you with the defendant.
And there's also no punctuation or proper grammar in this transcript.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
They need to delouse that.
Especially at the price she's charging per page.
The defendant at that point, she will tell you before she is allowed out of the car under the guise, again, of doing a search, touches her bare breasts, and she allows it to happen. And it makes her mad. And she goes inside and she tells people about it. You won't believe what this cop just did to me. That was on February 27th, 2014. About a month later,
is he just going to skip over the break-in? Is he just going to skip over that? He is. He's going to go to March. It's going to go to March.
Isn't March the break-in?
No, that was all on the 27th.
Oh, I thought the break-in was on March 25th or something like that.
No, the break-in was on March 27th.
Okay. Well, maybe he is.
He's just going to skip it. Okay. Sorry. Line 12.
Oh, man.
Did I mess you up? Sorry. You're on line 12.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got confused. That was on March 27th, 2014. About a month later, at the same location, Tabitha Barnes has a man living with her named Terry Williams. Terry Williams is a sex offender. He's living there under the radar. In March, Tabitha Barnes is not home. She and her children are gone somewhere. Terry Williams is home. The door to the house is shut. You'll see pictures of this house. You'll see pictures of the door. She'll describe to you the condition of the door on that day. It was shut. Terry Williams is inside sleeping.
Hold on for 1 second. He says this with so much confidence, he has no idea what's coming with Tabitha Barnes. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
The defendant's AVL shows him going to that. There's a CAD call, I believe, that shows I'm going into a house. I'm going to go check it out. He knows he's got 20 minutes before anybody checks on him.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
This is such a... I haven't read all of this, you guys, so a lot of this is surprising to me as well.
That's what he's been told at the academy. That's the way the system works. He helps himself into the house. Terry Williams will say, I never knew he was coming in the house until he wakes me up and he's in the house. Tabitha Barnes will say, it's my house. I wasn't there. I didn't give anybody permission to go into that house. Nevertheless, Mr. Williams will tell you he wakes up and the defendant is there and he hassles him. And he'll explain to you what was said and what he remembers about. And he doesn't remember a lot. He just remembers a cop woke him up and he doesn't want to have problems with the cops. Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Tabitha Barnes comes home during the midst of all this, and she'll tell you how she has now nicknamed the defendant Spike because of his hair. And she and his kids call him Spike. Weird. Spike drives by all the time. Spike's out there again, Mom. Things like that have occurred. On this day, Terry Williams explains what's gone on, and she is upset about it. What?
When Terry Williams tells her, I guess, what's gone on.
Right.
This is horrible.
When she comes home, he's still there. He puts her back in the police car again, and the kids are sent back inside again. This time, before he allows her to get out of the car, as he talks about warrants and as he talks about other things, he makes her expose her breast to him and expose her vagina to him before he is satisfied. The very next day, the
what?
of March? Wait, weren't we on February?
I'm telling you, all of these dates and stories are jacked up. He's got them all mixed up. I promise.
Okay, so he meant to say March 25th.
Yeah.
Right. When he said February 27th the second time. Okay. The very next day, the 26th of March, Tabitha Barnes is home. Tabitha Barnes is on the telephone. I anticipate you'll see Tabitha Barnes' phone record. She's talking to her mother, Gloria Prince. Gloria Prince lives in Texas. It's an 817 area code from the Fort Worth area. And she's on the phone with her mother. Spike's back. And she says to her mom, Spike's back. And he comes up and she will tell you again, yet again, another conversation she has at her household, unsolicited. She's minding her own business. She's not out smoking crack in the front yard, and she will tell you about that. I forgot to mention something about Terry Williams, the sex offender who was living in the house. Yeah, that's what you forgot to tell, is that he was a registered sex offender.
Oopsie.
Living too close to a school and a park. As Officer Holtzclaw interacts with him before Tabitha Barnes comes back, he says, I don't want you here. And every time I see you, I'm going to hassle you. Well, I think that's a true story right there. Roll ahead a little bit to April the 8th. On April the 8th, Terry Williams and another man who doesn't even have an address named Richard Hawkins is hanging out there at that house, close to it. And sure enough, there's a call, just like the defendant promised. He stops Terry Williams. The AVL shows he's there. He runs Terry Williams. He runs Mr. Hawkins, trying to see if he can hassle them. Do you have warrants? Do you have things I can arrest you for? He's good to his word. He does hassle the man that was in Tabitha Barnes' house. You'll hear from Terry Williams as well. Wow, Gigger wants to stick up for a sex offender living too close to a grade school and a park, breaking the Mr. Sex Crimes prosecutor.
But not only that, he's living in a house with fucking kids.
Yeah.
Sleeping in her kid's room. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't care whether you're a drug addict or fucking an alky or whatever. If you've got kids, then your kids should come first. I don't care. If you're not prepared to put your kids first, then you shouldn't have them. It's as simple as that. And they should have been taken away from you, in my opinion. Especially if there was a fucking paedophile living under the same roof. I mean, that just blows my mind that he's near a school and that he's actually living in a house with kids in it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. It's nuts.
I mean, to try and do that here, there's been a few times they've tried to put paedophiles up beside schools, because we've got a few schools in Pennycook, and they've tried to put paedophiles up there, and the people of Pennycook have went up in an uproar and went on a protest and everything like that and stood outside the house and everything like that, and the police has had to come and remove them.
Yeah, it's well, and they're also going to turn this on Daniel too in the future during the investigation, as you'll find out. The whole thing with the pedophile.
So let me guess. They're going to turn it on Daniel for not arresting a paedophile for living in the same house as children.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yet they're letting a witness away. We're letting a paedophile live in her house with her children. Make it make fucking sense.
I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. Oh, no. Okay. Carry on.
In the midst of the February event with Tabitha Barnes and the March event with Tabitha Barnes, you're also going to hear about Carla Raines. Carla Raines was walking alone a little bit after 11 p.m. on March 14th, 2014. There are ladies and there are men who walk around this part of town at night in the Spring Lake Division. Whether she's up to no good, whether she's involved in drugs, whether she's not, she says she's just walking. She's walking alone. AVL is on. He pulls up. And similar to what he's doing at this time period, the evidence is going to show that the interaction with Shardarian Hill that happened back in December was a, what are you going to do about these warrants? Let me help you kind of interaction. The interactions that now have gone into February and into March are interactions under the guise of, do you have something on you? I need to search you. How do I know you don't have things in your bra? Show me your breasts. Show me what's in your pants. These types of things are happening. And Carla Raines will tell you that she's in the area of 16th and Fons Hill, which is, again, that same part of town. Again, a high crime area, a high drug traffic area. He pulls up.
The area which Daniel was assigned to patrol.
Mm-hmm.
God, he's pissing me off.
I know, it's crazy.
Jesus.
He pulls her up and you'll hear him talk about, she will talk about how what do you have on you? What are you doing? Okay. You need to show me that you don't have anything in here. And she's forced under the threat of, if I don't comply with what this officer wants, he's going to take me to jail or he's going to do something else. She exposes her breast to him as well. You'll hear about that. This is March of 2014. About a month later, again, intermixed in that is some more events at Tabitha Barnes' house. But then you're going to hear about the lady I mentioned a moment ago, Florine Mathis. Florine Mathis is a multiple convicted felon. She is a drug addict. She was recently released from prison, and she's living the life of an addict. She will tell you that the house on the corner of 15th and Jordan, as I mentioned a little while ago, yeah, I've been in that house before. I kind of know that lady. Tabitha will say, yeah, I know Flo. She hangs out sometimes. On April the 14th, Florine Mathis had been drinking and she'd been smoking crack, and she was out on the streets. She was almost at 15th and Jordan, maybe a little bit north of that. The defendant stops her. He had been stopping her. He had stopped her before, and you'll see where he had run her through the crime information unit and she'd come back clear. He runs her again. He this time doesn't have her expose her bare breasts with this woman, but she will tell you what he does. What he does, though, is just feel all over. Never had a police officer do that before. I've been searched lots of times. They always call a female officer, she'll say. And she should know. She's had a lot of contacts with police. Never had this happen before. She should know. Here's what I want to see. I want to see those police reports, which I think we've seen some of them. I want to see what female officer got called out to search her, because that is not...
It's not accurate at all.
It's not commonly what happens.
No, not in that area.
Well, I mean, if you have someone like the Chardarion Hill incident, they did call a female officer there because she obviously was hiding drugs, and it was going to be more than just a cursory check for weapons.
Right.
Let's see. Am I on 6?
Yes. Or 5. Are you reading mine or your own?
My own, but okay. It's the same.
Yeah, no, I know. I didn't know if you were reading mine. I've scrolled up too high, but I think you're on 5.
No, I'm my own control freak over here. And what you will hear is a pattern beginning to develop from these ladies who live in this part of town and are living this type of a lifestyle. That is this. It happens. It happened. But I didn't tell because who's going to believe me? What are they going to do? And you think I'm going to tell on the police? You think I'm stupid? Don't you think I know what's going to happen if I tell on the police? Florine Mathis will tell you that that's the feeling she had as well. Who's going to believe that? 10 days later, April 24th, 2014, you're going to meet a young lady named Rosetta Great. Rosetta Great is trying to get her life together, but she's got lots of problems. She's a prostitute. She's a drug addict. In April of 2014, specifically on the 24th, and we know this because of when the defendant ran her in this crime information unit and the AVL. And we'll talk more about AVL before I'm done. He comes up or comes into contact with Rosetta Great at the area of 14th and Jordan, just a block south of that house where Tabitha Barnes lives. Rosetta Great has had so many contacts with police that her philosophy is just to be honest. What are you doing out here, ma'am? I'm looking for a date and I'm getting high. She will tell you that night she was honest, trying to get home, but every time she tried to get home, some new guy would come up and offer her money for sex, and she'd do it. And then she'd get high, and that's the lifestyle she was living. She remembers this, though, because the officer stops her. I'm getting high. It's what I'm doing. And he searches her. She has a purse. He puts her purse on top of the car. She has a crack pipe. She'll tell you that the officer dropped the crack pipe on the ground and crushed the glass, and that's what she's expected. She thinks she's going to jail. Puts her in the car and they drive off. They drive off and leave the purse on top of the car. That's true. She remembers that too. He forgot to get it. It's long gone. However, he says, I'm not taking you to jail. I'm going to take you where you live. Where do you live? She says, I live at 633 Culbertson. Wait, he just ran her?
Yeah, he just ran her and doesn't know where she lives.
Okay, that's interesting right there.
Yeah.
Now, where do you live? I know I just looked it up, but...
Oh.
That is a block off Lincoln Boulevard, south of the Capitol, around, trying to guess, maybe around 19th, 20th Street. But Culbertson is a street that runs east-west. You'll see pictures of that location. I'm going to just take you home. So he puts her in a car at around 14th and Jordan and then drives her south on Jordan, not west toward Culbertson and Lincoln Boulevard. She says, you're going the wrong way. You'll see the route map that AVL shows. He does. With all these ladies as, let me stop here and back up so you can understand.
Oh, he's giving me fucking whiplash. Sorry.
What happens. On June 18th, Janie Liggins, the conversation is had. A traffic stop is made, but there is no record of it in the system. Enter Detective Kim Davis and Detective Rocky Gregory. They start looking into this. You'll see photographs of Janie Liggins' car that are taken that day.
And they'll show you nothing. Sorry.
Yeah, they'll show you that the windows are tinted really dark, so he did not profile her. Officer Holtzclaw went off duty around 2 a.m. on the 18th. The report is made after that. These detectives are called out and begin their investigation before Officer Holtzclaw goes back to work on the 18th at 4 in the afternoon. Follow?
No.
So during that day, these two detectives have started their investigation. They have had crime scene units go out and look at Janie Liggins' car. Janie Liggins, sure enough, there's the cup in the console that has red Kool-Aid in it.
He's guilty. He's guilty.
They processed that.
Sorry.
Excuse me. She's had her dealings with the sexual assault nurse at the hospital, and they begin to look and try to figure out what happened. What I haven't told you at this point is something that Detective Gregory already knew, and that is a lady I haven't told you about named Terry Morris. And I'll tell you about Terry Morris again in a minute, but I'm still kind of jumping in the middle of Rosetta Great. Jeez.
Good God.
Terry Morris had made a police report. Terry Morris has the same kind of lifestyle, very similar to Rosetta Great, a drug addict, multiple convicted felon, lots and lots and lots of problems. She's made a police report that Detective Gregory some weeks before had got about a police officer, unknown, who had stopped and sexually assaulted her, but she lied when she talked to Detective Gregory. And she will tell you, when you hear from Terry Morris, she will tell you she lied to him. She lied and said the assault happened over by the City Rescue Mission, all the way to the City Rescue Mission. The defendant was taking me to the City Rescue Mission. The cop was. She didn't know who the cop was. So Detective Gregory had looked into that, but through AVL and through other things, and he'll tell you exactly all he had done at that point. He might not have looked at AVL at that point? Yeah, you almost screwed up there.
Ooh.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't look at AVL yet.
Yep. Oh
Oh
boy.
my God. He might not have looked at AVL at that point,
But he had.
but through running checks to see what had happened. No one took her. There was no record of anybody going over to the going.
There's a bit of an echo.
What?
There's a bit of an echo. I don't know if it's just me that's hearing it or if there's other people in chat hearing it, but there's a bit of an echo.
Oh, a bad echo. Let me grab my headphones.
Okay. Is it coming from me or from, hey, BW, how are you? Is it coming from me or from Kay?
I think it was Kay. It was when Kay was talking. I could hear a bit of an echo.
Okay. She went to get her headphones. Awesome. Phaedrax said he wasn't here. I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting. Not hearing it. Yeah.
Under your scars says no for her.
It's all you, Alice. Fix your ears. Clean up your ears.
I can hear it, but it's really it's pretty low.
Okay. Is it better?
Let me
I'll start reading and you guys can let us know.
Yeah, I can't hear it now.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. And honestly, that case had kind of been put in the fact of, well, maybe she's not telling us the truth. To a point, she wasn't. When you hear from her, she'll tell you, the reason I didn't tell Detective Gregory the truth, and it took several times of Detective Gregory going back and talking to her before she told Detective Gregory at least where it happened, and he could verify it. I'll talk about that as the evidence unfolds. What's this freaking evidence they keep talking about?
I know there's no evidence. It's crazy.
She told Detective Gregory it didn't happen on the northeast side of town. She told him it happened over on basically the west side of town by the city rescue mission. Because if she had told the truth about where she was, the people that she cared about would know that she had fallen off the wagon again. Because if she told them she was on the northeast part of town by that Liberty Station apartment complex we mentioned earlier, they would automatically know, well, you're over there smoking drugs again, smoking crack. That is what she told him.
Okay, Galen.
God.
You guys, for those of you who are more frequent listeners, we've played that for you a couple of times, that interview, just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, where Terry Morris changes her story with Detective Gregory on that third Badger session. So
yeah, but also the 911 call that we played before, which is when she made the complaint against an unknown officer driving the older model police car. The person, her boyfriend, she still was feeling like he was her boyfriend, even though they had broken up a few weeks before and he already had a new girlfriend. Her boyfriend is the one who called 911 on her. They asked him if she was on something. He knew that she was on something. He was there when she was interviewed by 2 or 3 different officers, and she told every single one of them that she was under the influence of crack. So that story makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
That the only reason she lied was so he wouldn't know she was over by Liberty.
Yeah.
I mean, in Rocky Gregory, doesn't he ask her in her second interview, are you sure it wasn't by Liberty?
I think it was this. Yeah, I think it was the second one for sure. Well, yeah, it had to be. Yeah. You sure it wasn't over there by Liberty?
He's the one who put Liberty in her head. So, I mean, he tried, if she was lying and it was really over by Liberty, she was lying. When he said, "You sure it wasn't over by Liberty?" seems like she would have responded differently.
Yeah.
But like you said, everyone who's heard the jailhouse interview that starts in the middle, the recording starts after they've already gone over the story a couple times. It's super clear what's going on there.
Yeah. And it makes what he just said, what dipshit just said, completely a lie. It's just a lie.
Yeah, it was their story. It's just like the police lights make all the hair look blonde.
Yep. Everybody's hair is blonde under the police lights.
I mean, they have all these things they say, like things that they actually first mentioned to the women, like, "Oh, you didn't tell because you were afraid," or "You didn't tell because you didn't think anyone would believe you." Yeah, I didn't tell because I didn't think anyone would believe me.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the detectives are the first people to say most of those things.
It's like Wiegert. I'm just going to come right out and ask you who shot her in the head.
Right.
Same thing. There's a lot of that.
With all of these ladies, whenever these two detectives get called, they start putting 2 and 2 together, and they get 47 every time. Oh, wait. And here's what that found out. What the hell? They found out that at the corner of Northeast 50th and Lincoln, there's an old Surety Life Insurance Company and the Oklahoma County Commissioners Association. Those buildings have video surveillance on the outside. I've never heard anything about the Oklahoma County Commissioners Association video. Those buildings have surveillance on the outside. They've obtained during that day, video surveillance to find out was there or was there not a traffic stop at Northeast 50th and Lincoln, because nowhere in our system does it show anybody stopped anybody at Northeast 50th and Lincoln. And they're skeptical because if a cop's following protocol, there's going to be a stop.
Just in case nobody else realizes it, if you're lost and confused, he's jumped back to Janie Liggins again. Dumbass. Sorry.
But what they find is, in fact, although the video is very grainy and very hard to see, it is undeniable an Oklahoma City police car has stopped someone at 50th and Lincoln a little after 2 a.m. on June 18th. Because you can see it. You can see the car. You can see another car. You can see the lights flashing police car. And you can't see what happens. You can't make out who's moving around. You certainly can't see a penis. But there's no doubt that there's a traffic stop. And that sends up big red flags in the minds of these two detectives, because something's not being done right. So the investigation goes on, and then they start looking. As the weeks unfold after the Janie Liggins incident, they start seeing, and they develop Officer Holtzclaw as a suspect. And I'm not going to tell you exactly how they do that, but they get there. There really is no doubt he makes that traffic stop pretty quick into the investigation. Yeah, right when he tells them he did.
Exactly.
What they don't know is, are there other victims? And so they look. They see he ran in crime information. Who are the women he's come into contact with and run to say, do you have warrants? Do you not? And what they find are all the ladies I've told you after Janie Liggins, is that they need a way to verify they're telling the truth, because they already know Terry Morris hasn't been truthful. They figure that out as far as where it happened. So they know he's come into contact with them. They know he's run them. But what they don't know is what the AVL shows. And with Rosetta Great, let's just start with her as an example, because you're going to hear about AVL on all of them.
Real quick, Kay, Haggis isn't real familiar with the case, and he wasn't here when we started, but this particular stop, he was on his way home from work and he had turned his system off. Otherwise, everything else is definitely tracked.
Yeah, this is the allegation that started the investigation. They're trying to say the Janie Liggins stop, after hours traffic stop, started the whole investigation. They're trying to say Terry Morris was the first reporter, but, well, you'll see. It shows, just like she said, he picks her up at 14th and Jordan, goes south, just like she said, then cuts over toward Lincoln, then goes back up north toward Culbertson, and then Culbertson to 633. And they see that over and over again, these ladies can't tell you the day that it happened, but they sure do remember what happened, because something like this has never happened before. Well, that's not the case with Rosetta Great.
Nope.
According to her.
Dun, dun, dun.
And time again, as Detective Davis and Detective Gregory begin to do legwork to try to find out, is there something more going on that we need to figure out? They see the AVL matches up with what these ladies say. They don't know it before. They just look and see who they've run. They interview them, they tell them what happened, and the AVL matches. At 633 Culbertson, Rosetta Great thinks, "Thanks. Officer Holtzclaw has just given her a ride home." And so she starts walking into the house. All of a sudden, she realizes he's right here behind me. She'll tell you, "I thought, okay, he's just seeing if I'm lying to him, because he wants to see if I really get in this house and I really do live here." I get that. But he goes right on inside with her. She lives, at that time, a man named Willie Carter owns that house. He doesn't own the house. He is not a big fan of the police department. He's not home. He will tell you he was out shooting pool in a pool competition this night, and he lets Rosetta live there, not in a sexual relationship, but because he will tell you because she needs help. "I've got a big house and I let her stay there when she's sober and sometimes when she's not." He's not home. Shooting pool. He follows Rosetta Great upstairs to a bedroom that she stays in. In that room, she will tell you how he puts his penis in her mouth, and how with Rosetta, he has her bend over the bed and he rapes her. By the time the detectives find Rosetta Great, she will tell you, "Who am I going to tell? Who do I call?" Tabitha Barnes will say that Spike patrols 15th and Jordan all the time. "If I make a telephone call, guess who they're going to send to investigate? What do I do?" Rosetta Great will tell you the same thing. You'll hear from her father. She told him. You'll hear what he thinks about it. By the time the police learn of Rosetta Great through their work, verify her story through the AVL, Rosetta Great has left Willie Carter's house because she's gone on a binge. Another lady has moved in, and any evidence of this sexual assault that happened in the bedroom has been moved, cleaned, washed, and gone. What the F? What? Okay.
Wow.
This is creative writing. Maybe when Galen Gigger gets fired, he can get a job at the university teaching creative writing.
No, he's got to learn grammar and punctuation first.
Well, there's that. Yeah. Another lady has moved in. I don't know anything about that. And just because they didn't find the evidence where she said it was, it's been moved, cleaned, washed, and gone.
Yep.
That's crazy. Nevertheless, the police get a warrant to go into Willie Carter's house because, I may have mentioned, he's no fan of the police department. And they search it. They take pictures. And Rosetta will talk about those pictures and describe what it is that they're seeing and where that assault occurred inside that house. I apologize for the length, but there's a lot of evidence, folks. Go forward about 11 days to April 25th of 2014, and you're going to hear a lady named Regina Copeland. Regina Copeland in 2014 was a drunk. She had destroyed relationships with her family. She was a drunk. She was driving drunk on the 25th of April, 2014. Officer Holtzclaw initiates a traffic stop because it looks like she's driving drunk at 14th and Kellam on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. He comes in contact with her, and you will see that he puts himself out on a traffic stop. The AVL shows that he is there. The dispatching shows that he is there, and he is running her for warrants. And she'll tell you about the conversation she has. She doesn't want to go to jail. She expects that she is going to jail or at least going to detox, and she sure don't want to do that. She doesn't want to go to jail. As they talk, she pleads with him. Don't let me leave my car right here at 14th and Kellam, because if I leave my car at 14th and Kellam, when I get out, the car ain't going to be here. Okay. That's what's going to happen. And she tells so Officer Holtzclaw does this. He lets a drunk driver says, okay, where do you want to go? I've got a relative who lives at 24th and Miramar, north of 23rd Street, one block by the Oklahoma City School Bus Depot over near I-35. The first road off of I-35 if you come west. I-35 Bus Depot, Miramar, 24th and Miramar. I have a relative. I can park my car there, and then he lets AVL shows. He drives from Kellam to 14th to 24th and Miramar. She says, I drove from Kellam to 24th and Miramar, and I parked my car at my relative's house. I don't go in. I'm estranged from them. What you will then hear is that at the end of that block, there's a house, and you'll see a picture of it that basically has covers over the windows. There's a grassy area. Then there's Miramar, and then there's a fence, and then there are school buses. And the time of this is around 8:30, but it's already dark. 25th of April, 2014. There's a side yard of that house outside of those windows that are covered up with only empty bus depot lot next door. He rapes her. Bends over in the back seat of the car, rapes Regina.
It's not an empty bus lot.
No, it's not. And it's lit up like a Christmas tree.
Like a freaking Christmas tree, you dickhole.
Bends her over in the back seat, rapes Regina Copeland, and then leaves. You'll see as AVL that he'll leave from that spot, go down to 23rd, go 1 block over, go back up, and then this one, you'll actually see an animation of him moving where it shows him stopping at the end of that block for a few moments and then going on. You can decide if that's significant or not. Go ahead about 2 more weeks and you're going to meet a young lady named Sherry Ellis. Sherry Ellis on May 7th of 2014 was cheating on her boyfriend. She was in a long-term relationship with a man named Terry Mack. Terry Mack was a disabled man who'd suffered a stroke sometime before, and their relationship was deteriorating. And she'll tell you she was cheating on him with another man named Edwin Smith. Edwin Smith lives in an area that's relatively close to Creston Heights Elementary, which is an abandoned elementary school. Remember I mentioned Miramar? If you go straight south on Miramar past 23rd Street, keep on going down around 19th Street, there's Creston Heights Elementary. It's boarded up, it's abandoned, it's just there. There's a park that they put a playground in back in the field behind the school that's relatively new, but the school's shut down. Miramar keeps going south and then it turns around 13th Street, and that turn you're going to hear about it a little bit. It's called Dead Man's Curve. It's a relatively isolated kind of deserted part. There's a few things around. There's a church. It's not very busy late at night. Sherry Ellis, it may never be busy actually. Sherry Ellis will tell you, why is he intermingling Dead Man's Curve and Sarita Bowen's case with Sherry Ellis? That's weird.
I don't know, because I was just thinking, why is he talking about the alleged Dead Man's Curve? That's weird.
I guess if these jurors stay confused the whole time, and they say penis and vagina enough.
Yeah, I know why. Because he's a fucking bell end. That's why.
Sherry Ellis, it may never be busy, actually. Sherry Ellis will tell you that she's walking from Edwin Smith's house back toward the area where Terry Mack lives after having a sexual rendezvous. The defendant pulls up on her. That's not what she said. Anyway.
That's not right at all.
No, she said she left Terry Mack's house where she was living on 16th Terrace.
16th Terrace.
And
she was going to her cousin's house, Dion or whatever.
Yeah. The defendant pulls up on her at 18th and Highland. It's a street just a block or so over from Miramar, comes in contact with her, asks her what she's doing. She tells him that I'm walking. At that location, you'll see a photograph of that location. She'll describe, if I remember right, a bush that you'll see a picture of. He there has her expose under the guise of doing a search, her breasts, and expose her vagina. She then tells the detectives when they interview her that after that...
Who are we talking about?
We're talking about Sherry Ellis, actually, and the crepe myrtle bush.
But she never claimed that he made her expose her breasts or her, what I'm trying to read. Expose her breasts and vagina. That was never said by Sherry Ellis.
I can't remember. I think something happened she alleges on the street right there before he took her to.
Yeah, he put his penis in her mouth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So this whole thing here, guys, everybody that's still listening, that's a blatant lie, because according to Sherry Ellis, he he never told her to expose her breasts or vagina. Never. The thing that she claimed was that on this stop by the crepe myrtle tree, that he put his penis in her mouth, and then he put her in the back of the patrol car allegedly and drove her away, and then allegedly raped her. But that's bullshit, Giger. Get your shit together.
He just doesn't, he's not prepared, just like the defense isn't adequately prepared for 13 trials at once here. I mean, he has a lot more help than the defense had, but he's still not prepared. She then tells the detectives when they interview her that after that happened, he then put me in the car and took me to a street. I believe it's 18th Street. 18th Street goes toward the abandoned school, but it dead ends in a cul-de-sac into the field where that playground is that I told you about a moment ago. You'll see photographs of that. So 18th comes in this way, dead ends to a cul-de-sac, field, school, Miramar. The defendant goes down that cul-de-sac, hops the curb, and then takes her into the field and the school property that's all abandoned. She will show you photographs of that location. I anticipate even visiting some of these scenes before this trial is over, if not all of them. Well, what's interesting is last week, last Thursday in Rhonda's podcast, Brian Bates explained by mathematical calculations how Daniel could have only been at the most 36 feet beyond the curb before he parked his car and had the 3 minutes of his car not moving. So that's nowhere near any hidden area and nowhere near the area she claims that he stopped her.
Right.
And it's out in the wide open space. So it's right there by the playground equipment.
Yep.
Let's see. There, he bends her over the back seat like he's done before and accomplishes sexual intercourse with Sherry Ellis. I'll tell you that Sherry Ellis believes to this day that the officer who did this is a black man. That's her memory. There's no other black officers whose AVL put them at this location.
That you checked out.
You'll hear about that. And when these detectives checked out Sherry Ellis's account, they looked at the AVL, and sure enough, there's a stop at 18th and Highland, and he goes up to Highland, down the cul-de-sac, and you'll hear about what happens when the AVL, when they go off a city street, what the AVL does, and I'll just let you hear about that.
Thank you.
Then it shows again the AVL picking up on the other side of the school after she says he's done. She says, I believe he says to her, I'll see you again. He may say, have a nice day.
Yeah, you got your accusers mixed up, Bigger.
She'll tell you what she remembers.
Sorry.
I don't remember for sure right now which one, what he said, but then it shows him going north on Miramar. The next day, May 8th, I mentioned Terry Morris before. As this investigation goes on, Detective Gregory knows he needs to go talk to Terry Morris again. And through I think 3 separate interviews, Terry Morris finally begins to tell Detective Gregory, yeah, I fell off the wagon and here's what happened. She's at those apartments, Liberty Station apartments, the ones I mentioned before. She tells this time not about a trip toward the homeless shelter over there on the north, on the west side of town, but instead she tells Detective Gregory what he did was take me down to 24th and Lindsay. Make sure I got my locations right. Yeah, 24th and Lindsay, which is, the Oklahoma History Museum. State capital's here. To the north and the east, at that intersection of 23rd and Lincoln, is the Oklahoma History Center. Behind that is 24th and Lindsay area. He takes me there, and then he stops behind that museum, she calls it. Behind that museum, he makes me show him my breasts under the guise of searching. He makes me expose my vagina under the guise of searching. And he puts his penis in my mouth. Behind the museum, she called it. His AVL shows him coming to 0 speed at that location. Then, she says, he takes me north and takes me toward what is an empty field. You may not realize it, but there are parts of northeast Oklahoma City, and you may visit them and see pictures of them where houses have been mowed down and there's nothing there, and there are open spaces and fields despite it being in the middle of Oklahoma City. She says, I think he's going to kill me in that field, and I beg him, please don't drive into that field. If we go in that field, she's thinking she's never coming out. She tells this to Detective Gregory. So instead, she begs him, take me toward my relative's house. So they go down and around the area of 26th and a street called Urban League. She gets out, and then he goes on his way. Again, she's able to tell this detective, and the evidence is going to show that she's able to tell this detective not that she just came in contact with an officer, but that he put her in his car, he drove me here, and then he drove me there, then he drove me over here, and then he drove me down here. And there's no record of arrests. There's no record of, I found drugs on this person, I need to make a police report. There's no radio call to a dispatcher saying, hey, I need to get into that Varuna system and tell you about the contact I made because this prostitute named Rosetta Great had a crack pipe on her, and even though I'm going to exercise some discretion and not arrest her, I need to document that. She's on 15th and Jordan, the same high crime area. If another cop comes in contact with her, she's a prostitute. Don't let her lie to you. None of that. Just the AVL showing they went where they told the detectives they went. Well, first of all, that's what those field interview cards are for, is to write that stuff down, and then you turn them in, and then they enter the stuff into Varuna. You don't call someone and say, hey, I need to document that shit on my phone. Jesus. Stupid idiots.
But wait a minute, did we just jump from Terry Morris again now to Rosetta Great? He just
wants to say, he's just bringing up Rosetta Great so he can say about the crack pipe that Daniel broke, or that he had Rosetta Great break, actually.
Oh, God. Okay. I have to say this. James Crane over in Foul Play says, he puts it in her mouth under the guise of searching. Facts, James, facts.
Oh my God. He likes the word guys.
He does. It makes
if we do a search on guys, I bet it's 100. All right.
100.
We're getting 100 guys. Guys. Under the guys. We're getting closer, folks. About 3 weeks later, Sarita Bowen is a young lady you'll hear from. Sarita will tell you, I was not on drugs. I was not doing drugs. I was walking from my mom's house The part of town this police officer stopped me. Yeah, it's surrounded by bad stuff, but there's good people who live right in this area. I know the lady lives at that. I know the lady lives at that house. I know the lady who lives at this house. They're not drug houses. They're good people. I'm just walking. I should have the right to walk around my house even though it's around midnight. I've never heard that story before.
I haven't either.
He comes into contact with Sarita Bowen, the AVL shows, and she tells us, we confirm it, the detectives rather confirm it, at 16th and Highland. We're back in that area near Creston Heights Elementary. Okay, at 16th and Highland, they come in contact. She says, I'm just walking from my mom's house. She'll tell you that her mom lives down the way. Down the way. So I believe, she, I believe, might have been drinking. I don't remember. She'll tell you what she was doing. Can't drink at her mom's house if I'm remembering the right one. Mom don't like that. But she was out. They come in contact. The AVL shows it. He runs her. She's clear. Doesn't have warrants. But then she'll tell the detectives when they find her and say, hey, we saw that he ran you. Did something happen? Were you victimized? Let me tell you about it. AVL shows they went into the car, 16th and Highland. They go up. They go over to Miramar. They go down Miramar, past the school, past Creston Heights Elementary, to that area I referred to earlier as Dead Man's Curve. It's a place where people dump trash. It's a place that's overgrown. You'll see pictures of it. I anticipate you'll visit it. At Dead Man's Curve, this officer puts his penis in her mouth, bends her over the back seat, and puts his penis in her vagina and rapes her. And then she says, he drove me down just a little bit further after the rape occurred and had me get out of his car at about 13th and Miramar. And again, you're going to show the officer's map that goes just like she says. Okay. The evidence is going to show that as we back up and go through this from Janie Liggins and then backing up 7 months, that the officer's actions became more bold, more brazen, and more violent. It's escalating, the evidence will show. 5 days after Sarita Bowen, you're going to hear from Carla Johnson, back to the area of 15th and Jordan, actually 16th and Jordan. She's walking to a friend's house that she's going to call Mr. Yero. Mr. Yero is, I don't remember if Y-E-R-O. I don't remember if I spelled it when I read the witness list. She's on her way to his house. She's not doing things that are particularly illegal. She's just walking to the house. He comes in contact. And on this one, she remembers that this same officer about a month earlier had driven past her, done a U-turn, and then come back and talked to her. And she remembers that intersection. These detectives found in the AVL system about a month earlier that AVL shows he goes up, he does a U-turn, and he comes back and talks to her and runs her about a month earlier. About a month later in her memory, she says at 16th and Jordan, I'm walking to my friend, Mr. Yero's house. The officer comes up and under the guise of searching, he makes me expose my breast to him and he makes me expose my vagina to him. And that happens at that one location. And the AVL shows and the contact shows and the CIU shows that He came in contact with her there as well. I mentioned to you that whenever I was telling you about Janie Liggins, the evidence is also going to show, and you're going to hear evidence that Janie Liggins wasn't the first sexual assault that occurred on his shift, which began June 17th at 4 and ended June 18th at 2. Janie Liggins' stop happened around 2 a.m. in the morning. Sometime a couple hours before that, Kayla Lyles is living in an apartment complex with her boyfriend named James Anderson, motel. They had gotten into a fight over something. She remembers them having a fight. She decided to take a walk and cool off, and that's what she did. She stays at the Relax Inn, which is on 23rd, and she has walked. She's walked about a half mile or so to the area of 14th and Lottie. At 14th and Lottie, she is on the phone with James Anderson, and they're talking. James Anderson will tell you, and she will tell you, that as they're talking, she says, "Hey, the cop is stopping me." Anderson says, "Stay on the phone. I want to hear what goes on." The phone goes off. You'll see her phone records. Her phone records show telephone calls to the Relax Inn at the same time that the defendant is stopping her via the AVL system. She will say this defendant then talks to her and takes her back in the car from 14th and Lottie to the area of 18th, 19th, and Miramar, Creston Hills Elementary School. She'll talk about how he went the same way, drove back into that field, goes back to where those buildings are and the trees are covered up. And at that location during this time on the 18th, a couple hours before he comes in contact with Janie Liggins, he has her expose her breasts, expose her vagina. He puts his penis in her mouth. He bends her over the back seat of the car, and he has sex with her. Phone calls are coming from the Relax Inn by James Anderson during this time. She's not answering. She walks back. "Who's going to believe me?" she says. Who am I going to call?" she'll say. Earlier that day, now the shift's starting, 4, June 17th, 2014. Spring Lake had redistricted a little bit in June.
Redistricted? Is that a word? Redistricted.
I didn't know this. And not only did it include patrol areas on the northeast side of town, it expanded and changed to where it included some over in the Blackwelder and northwest 14th part of town. It kind of redistricted, took it west of Broadway Extension, west of Lincoln Boulevard. Do we know this?
Well, that he got the district changed. It definitely did change, and that's when he had to start working in the west side as well. So he stayed in the east sector, but he also had to take on the west sector. That's when he ended up with Adara's case.
Okay.
I don't remember when that happened, but I know it did.
Adara Gardner is a 17-year-old, incredibly troubled, misdirected young lady. Well, this is the first time young lady is appropriate to be used, so you got that right finally. Drugs, sex, she's a mess. She's walking with a couple of her friends earlier in the day, and she'll tell you about how she's at 13th and Indiana. Earlier in the day, she's at Park and Blackwelder. You'll see a map. The defendant rolls up with her and her two friends, runs them for warrants, finds out if they have active warrants. You'll hear about a runaway juvenile report and some other things. We'll talk about those things, but the point of it is he comes in contact with her earlier in his shift. They talk. He's kind of focused. Adara will say, on the guy that is with them a little bit. That's her memory, but in any event, he runs them. They're clear, and he lets them go. A few hours go by. Later on in the shift, she's at 13th in Indiana. This time she's alone. Same day, later on, hours later, he pulls up. He's just run her a few hours before. He stops her again. This time, she says she's just around the corner from the house where her mother lives. Her mother and her have a terrible relationship. The house is trashed, but that's where she's staying at this point in her life when she's not sleeping wherever it is she sleeps. She's just visiting her mom for the summer. She lives with her dad.
None of that. He's making her sound like a poor runaway child who's been left out on the streets, and we all should feel sorry for her. Because none of that was true. Well, it might have been true, but it's never been reported anywhere that the house was a mess. Was it? What does he say?
Well, I mean, we don't know what the inside of that house looks like. We only know what
he's saying.
The mudroom or whatever that closed-in front porch looks like, which is trash.
It was, but there's not anything in a police report that we've read that says that the house was trashed, that where she's staying at in her life. This is in her life. Her mother, her and mom did have a terrible relationship, according to her mom. Mm-hmm. But just, I'm trying to look here. The house is trash, but that's where she's staying at this point in her life when she's not sleeping. Wherever it is, she sleeps. That's where I was getting at. There's no indication in a report that we've read or heard that says that she was sleeping wherever it is she sleeps. She was sleeping at her mom's. So he's making her out to be a poor little orphaned young lady, which is just a bunch of, what is it?
Well,
Alice? Come on.
By the nature of her situation and her age at that time and her relationship with her mom, she would, get mad at her mom and then stay gone for 2 or 3 days. But this makes it seem like something different.
It does. It makes it, he's saying it like she's been kicked out of her house and she's not allowed to go back there, and so she sleeps wherever she can sleep. And
he's making her sound like she's a neglected child.
There you go.
Yeah. I feel this poor wee lassie. She has arguments with her mum, and she has to go and find somewhere else to stay when she has an argument with her mum, and it's really, really bad. And sometimes we don't even know where she sleeps.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure that sometimes we don't know where she sleeps, but
it's just the way he's making
the whole scenario is not really correct, even according to Adara herself.
Right.
In her deposition.
If Adara saw, well, I was going to say if she saw this, she was there, but, well, she wasn't in the opening statements, I don't think. But anyway, if Adara had seen or heard that, she'd be pissed because she wouldn't want to be thought of as some random teenage kid that's just wandering the streets aimlessly. And
maybe.
The old me child.
Yeah, this is just, that's what I was saying. Go, Alice, because I was saying this is just a load of
bullshit. Bollocks.
I was going to say bullshit, but I wanted you to say bollocks.
Okay. Bullshit, bollocks, and he's a bell end. Which is another name for a dickhead, so.
Okay, sweet. I'm going to start speaking in Scott. got her.
That's funny. All right. He picks her up at 13th and Indiana, and you'll see the AVL map. And he takes her just basically around the corner to her house. And she says that he's trying to find out, do you really live here? I think you're lying to me. I don't think you really live here. You can't get into the door of the house because when you see pictures, you'll understand it doesn't work. The way you get in is you pry it open. Well, yeah, she left her key in the house. So that's the way you secure the house, and that's the way you get into the house. And that's her lifestyle, and that's bullshit. You'll see a covered porch. You'll see a covered porch on the front of that house. It's filled with junk. She'll tell you that the defendant drives her to her house and she's going to try to prove to him that she really does live where she says that she lives. And he's following her, but when they get to the enclosed porch and there's an old ratty screen door, it's kind of hanging on the hinges, but it closes and they are obscured from view. There was a chair. The chair is not there when the police find her, but she says there is a chair. And during this stop, he touches her bare breasts. He sticks his fingers in her vagina, and he has her bend over the chair and rapes her from behind. And she'll tell you about the comments he makes to her while he's doing that, and she leaves. And she doesn't tell her mother. Doesn't get along with her mom. Who am I going to tell? Who's going to believe me? Interestingly, I don't know if I mentioned it, he also puts his fingers inside of her on that porch. Yeah, you mentioned it. Her mother at some point, as this investigation has gone on, is interviewed and remembers Adara talking about a hot cop that she met. Adara will tell you, no, I was talking about a different cop when I told Mom that. But the communication between the two of them is not good. But what is interesting is that same day he stops her earlier, runs her, she's clear, goes to her house, and the AVL shows it later. That same day, what the hell? What was that description of? Okay, whatever. Maybe you guys got it. I'm lost. That same day before he goes to Creston Heights with Kayla Lyles and before he stops Janie Liggins after his shift is over and he's turned everything off, that same day at 11:42 p.m., Adara Gardner's mother is home. Adara doesn't have a phone, but she has given this officer, as she's trying to prove she is who she is and she lives where she lives, her mother's phone number. And her mother says that she got a telephone call from a cop asking about Adara at 11:42, and it pissed her off because she's made a runaway report. Why are you calling? Looking for my daughter. She's a 17-year-old kid, and she cusses him out and she hangs up. It makes her so mad that she took a screenshot of that telephone call on her telephone and still had it when these detectives find her. That's not the truth of how that happened. I think I can find my old cell phone and get you a screenshot. I'll have to look for it. And interestingly, evidence is going to show that from the defendant's phone records, he makes a phone call on his phone records to Adara Gardner's mother. Her name is Amanda Gates, just like she said. And the evidence is also going to show that at the same time he's making that phone call at 11:42, he is driving down the street and stopping at the end while he's on the phone. Why does he make that sound so nefarious? Like, hopefully Scott Adams is going to say what he was really doing.
God, I cannot wait to hear from Scott Adams because I am like dying right now. You guys, I promise you, to those of you who are listening, this has been the most whack opening statement I think I've ever heard in any trial. I don't know. I mean, if you agree with me, put a 1 in your chat because I can't. I'm like so confused by this opening statement. It's not. Anyway, go
Well,
ahead.
he's just trying to connect a bunch of fingers and vaginas and, you know, rapey schoolyards and
Dead man curves and
I mean, it's
just bizarre. This is just bizarre listening to him. He sounds like he's drunk or on drugs. I'm not kidding. He can't form a complete thought in one specific storyline. To me, it seems like he's just all over the place, and you can never tell because of the way the court reporter typed it. You can never tell if he's like quoting what the witness is going to say, or if it's just like one big run-on thing. It's just weird to me.
She probably couldn't figure it out either.
So well, yeah,
it shouldn't be too hard on her. I mean,
yeah, in her defense,
I've heard him. Let's get out the Notorious video and show it sometime so people can see how ridiculous his speech patterns are.
Yeah, how he taught. Yeah, we'll have to do that again. We haven't done that for a long time.
All right, one other thing I've neglected to tell you that's an important piece of evidence. Whenever these two detectives get involved on June 18th, they have done what they can that day, but they're still operating in real time and don't know anything about the other ladies that I've told you about. But when Officer Holtzclaw comes to work at 4 p.m., they want to talk to him. And they pull him in, and they end up taking his uniform from him that day, his pants. When they submit his pants to the DNA lab in Oklahoma City, they do swabs. You'll hear from Elaine Taylor, a DNA forensic analyst who works for the Oklahoma City Police Department DNA lab. I don't mean to be vulgar, but they take a Q-tip, basically, dip it in saline, and they rub this part of the fly and this part. Well, actually, this part right here, and then if it was unzipped, there's a piece of fabric, and they rub that, looking to see if they can obtain evidence, because they thought that Janie Liggins says that his penis was in her mouth. They're trying to see if they can get Janie Liggins' DNA. What's vulgar about that?
I was just going to say, fingers in vaginas and penises in vaginas and penises in mouths, and that's more vulgar to me than.
But rubbing a swab on a strip of fabric, I don't want to be vulgar.
Yeah, okay. And I think he's saying that because he's using his own pants as an example, but still.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes more sense. I wondered what he was indicating on.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know.
Well, I'll quit being that way then. I guess.
Okay.
I'm going to touch my junk here for a minute. There's DNA. There's a female profile, but as they talk to Janie Liggins and as they talk to each of the ladies that I've told you about, they voluntarily let them take their DNA. And as this case unfolds in weeks of this investigation, every lady I've told you about, the DNA, it's not matching. It's not Janie Liggins. It's not Sherry Ellis. It's not Kayla Lyles. It's not Carla Johnson. It's not Florina Mathis. It's not. They determined that Officer Holtzclaw has a girlfriend named Carrie Hunt. They obtained Carrie Hunt's DNA sample, and it's not Carrie Hunt. Finally, when we find the 17-year-old runaway, the DNA matches, and you'll hear about the statistics and the probability and the likelihood of everybody else having that DNA other than Adara Gardner.
before I go on, just a reminder, and if Cherie's able to, or Alice, maybe you can find it, but if you haven't already watched Dr. Silkman's presentation about all of this, it was an excellent, excellent presentation. We'll see if one of the mods can find it and put it in the chat for both chats.
About 2 months ago, the DNA lab also obtained swabs from the inside of the pants. They swabbed the inside too, not just the outside part of the zipper, but the inside part of the zipper. DNA from Adair Gardner is found with a very high statistical probability there as well. You'll hear the chemists talk about 17-year-olds and body responses and hormones. She's not qualified to talk about 17-year-olds and body responses and hormones and things like that, and trying to help us understand why it would be there.
James Crane, it's getting really hard to figure out.
Oh my God.
True story.
Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, I've talked for a long time. This case is lengthy. There's a lot of evidence in this case. I haven't told you it all. When I'm finished presenting this case to you, and when Miss McConnell has finished presenting this evidence to you, and you hear the efforts of the two detectives sitting at this table, the state of Oklahoma will ask you to not only find this defendant guilty of all the crimes we have accused him of, based on the evidence we presented, but also ask you to fix a punishment that is appropriate for a police officer doing these things. Thanks for listening to me. Wow.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a little after, it's about 3:12, so we'll take an afternoon break. What we'll do is we'll break until 3:30, so at 3:30, I'd ask you to be back in the jury box. Leave your notepads in the chairs. Don't discuss the case. Don't let anyone discuss the case with you. Don't try to find out anything about the case at all. So with that, we will be in recess until 3:30.
Oh, gosh. Okay, Jesus, God help me. That was painful, because that was just painful. That was one of the most bizarre, like I said, one of the most bizarre opening statements I've ever heard. I don't know if anybody else agrees or not, but it sounded bizarre to me.
I think it was extremely, I'm trying to think of the correct word, but having this defense attorney to try to defend against 13 of these various accusers at one time, I think it was totally unfair for Daniel's defense in any capacity. They should have split it up at minimum.
Yeah.
Or there should have been court-supported more attorneys to help with the case to split it up that way. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just one guy that basically had to handle them all. There was absolutely no way one guy could handle this. No way.
Well, and it doesn't even sound like he, I mean, there's nothing saying he had to write it out or anything like that. I know that they like to speak, from the, off the cuff. I get that. But when you're doing this many accusations with this many different locations and etc., we try to talk about it too. And as soon as you mention one thing, it does lead you into another thing. And that's
right.
Why we're trying to do this in the time, following the timeline, as you know, that we present in the other podcasts. We're trying to do it that way, because otherwise, to try to explain to people this case, it's almost impossible. unless they've got a couple of hours to sit down, so you can try to make them understand how this thing works with that thing, and this one goes to that. It's just really difficult. And he just sounded like he was drunk or on drugs, like he could not complete a cohesive storyline or thought. That's my opinion. Okay, we've been 2 hours and 20 minutes. Adams only has 35 page. Jack, are you up to reading that?
I sure can.
Okay. You don't have to. I just want to.
No, not
Okay.
a problem.
All right, let me share that other screen. I've been kind of sucking at keeping up with the scrolling, but oopsie.
I'll just read from
From
what you have on
mine?
StreamYard. From StreamYard,
Okay.
yep.
All right. Okay, this is. Oops. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Alice, do you want to do the court part for me?
I'm not quite ready yet. Give me just 1 second. I'm gonna get a drink here.
Okay.
I have pills to take.
Oh, I feel ya.
Yeah, I don't. Hey, getting old. You better not be a punk. You're gonna get killed because getting old is tough. It's hard work.
It is hard. I'm not too far behind you, brother, so I get it.
Alrighty, I'm drinked up and ready to go.
You're drinked up and ready to go. Okay, Alice is going to read the court part, I think. Maybe. I'll just read it real quick. The court, let the record reflect that all members of the jury are present. Counsel for the state, counsel for the defendant. The defendant is present. Mr. Adams, does the defense wish to give its opening statement at this time?
We do, Your Honor.
All right, you may.
May it please the court, counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You've had an opportunity at this time to hear. You want to blow that back up?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot you said you were getting older.
Yeah, I need 2 good eyes. You've had an opportunity at this time to hear the government's opening statement. And like we said earlier, it's kind of a guideline of what to expect to happen here in the courtroom over the next several days. I'd like to correct a couple of things that Mr. Geiger brought up in his opening statement. How important it is, and I really don't know. But I think it's important to Mr. Holtzclaw that we have a fair and accurate representation of how all this happened, or all this transpired. Mr. Geiger told you that he was given a badge and a gun and was sworn in as an Oklahoma City police officer in September of 2011. That is not true. He went to the academy in September of 2011, and he had to go through Oklahoma City's rigorous training in regards to new recruits. And it's not just your simple everyday job assignment where you go in and you respond to a newspaper ad and they just take them as they come. They do background checks. They do things that typically you don't see in regular everyday jobs. They do mental evaluations. They go back and look at your college degree, if you have one, and check out your grades. Talk to people and find out if you're someone who's suited to be an Oklahoma City officer carrying a badge and a gun. Daniel Holtzclaw checked out fine on all those things. But let's back up a little bit and find out how we got to where we are today. Back in the late 70s, Daniel's father, a guy by the name of Eric Holtzclaw, was in the United States Air Force and was stationed all over the world, basically. He met a lady by the name of Kimiko in Japan, and they... Line 7.
By Mr. Geiger. Mr. Giger, may we approach?
eventually got married.
I'm sorry.
Come on up.
Mr. Giger, I realize it's opening, but I don't know that it's relevant to go into the 1970s and the family history of Mr. Holtzclaw, nor would it be admissible at trial.
I'm just giving a background of who he is and where he grew up because I think it's going to become relevant to this case.
Overruled.
As I was saying, he met Kimiko over in Japan, eventually married Kimiko, and they had a daughter by the name of Julie. A daughter by the name of Jennifer, and then Daniel Holtzclaw was born in 1986 in Guam. And Daniel moved to the United States when he was about 9 years old with his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Holtzclaw, and they lived in Enid, Oklahoma throughout his entire life until he eventually goes off to college. While Daniel was in high school and in Enid High School, he was an All-American football player and won awards for football and academics and had absolutely zero contact whatsoever with law enforcement. Never was in any trouble at all. And believe me, after all, that's been vetted and gone through and everything. His father, upon retiring from the United States Air Force, became a police officer there in the city of Enid and has attained the rank of lieutenant, which is the equivalent of a captain here in Oklahoma City, and he currently serves in that position. Daniel has had two dreams in his life, and one of those dreams was to be an NFL football player. His second dream was to be a police officer. After he accepted a full-time scholarship to Eastern Michigan University, he started for 4 years as a middle linebacker and broke all sorts of NCAA Division I records for the tackles and things of that nature. Was an outstanding football player. After completing his educational requirements there at Eastern Michigan, he decided he wanted to go to give the NFL a try. Unfortunately, unlike most young men in that situation, he didn't make it. He went to the Detroit Lions, signed as a free agent, tried out, and was cut. He realized at that point in time that he was not going to realize his number one dream of being an NFL football player. So at that point in time, he started applying to police departments. And one of the that attracted him the most was Oklahoma City because of the size and the location to his family in Enid. He also had a brother-in-law who is a police officer in Norman, Oklahoma. So after Daniel goes through the application process and begins the academy here in Oklahoma City, it's a lengthy process where you do rotations with different units and you go to different parts of the city. You have ride along partners, and you have a lot of testing to be done, and you can only imagine all of the things that they have to go through to actually become a certified police officer. During his term there, he grades out, as Mr. Giger said, grade on basically everything. And eventually, he is granted his badge and his gun and his commission card, and he becomes what's called a CLEET, C-L-E-E-T, certified, which means that you are trained by law enforcement officers to carry and use a weapon here in the state of Oklahoma. And he becomes a full-time officer here in Oklahoma City. His assignments as a rookie officer, as a baby officer, is what a lot of them call them, is the Spring Lake Division. And that's the division we've all been talking about over on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. And as Mr. Giger said, it's probably, or is without any question, the highest crime area in Oklahoma City. It's predominantly a very low socioeconomic area. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of gangs. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of murders. There's a lot of rapes. There's a lot of things that happen over on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. As Mr. Giger said, they're not particularly fond of the Oklahoma City Police Department for whatever reasons, and I believe a lot of them will come out and the proof will be that it's because the activity they choose to have over there on that side of the city. It's a different. I can assure you that the evidence you're going to hear in this courtroom and what you're going to witness from these witnesses on the witness stand is you're going to see and hear things that you cannot fathom what happened in your neighborhood, nor could you fathom the individuals being in your neighbor and running around late at night and the things that they're up to and the things that they're doing. Like Mr. Giger said, kind of an atom bomb of Hiroshima goes off on June 18th of 2014 for Daniel Holtzclaw as a young, rookie, vibrant, excited, loving his job police officer here in Oklahoma City. And as he was taught in the academy, it's what's called community policing. You're not only supposed to be a police officer in your patrol car, but what they encourage officers to do is to get to know people in the community. You get to know people where you patrol to be seen all the time. And if you see people walking late at night, to stop and inquire and introduce yourself. Find out what's going on. Obviously, bigger matters will be taken more serious than the smaller matters. But as you can only imagine in Northeast Oklahoma City, there's a lot of activity going on over there that is not legal, and a lot of things are happening over there. So he's developing into this young police officer, and he's very naive. And I think all that will be evident through the evidence you'll hear through the witness stand and otherwise. And he's very gullible. And Daniel Holtzclaw, during his time as an Oklahoma City police officer, come into contact with a number of individuals. Up until June 18th of 2014, it was just another day at the office to him, not in regards to the allegations that are against him today, but in regards of the way he would police. He wanted to get to know people. He wanted them to know him. He wanted them to trust him. He knew that his life and the life of his fellow officers here in Oklahoma City depended on these people trusting him and trusting what he said and what he would do. And all that leads up to what happens on the 18th. And what Mr. Giger left out of this story with Ms. Liggins. And if you'll recall, that's the very first person that ever reported Mr. Holtzclaw in regards to any sort of sexual activity. And that was on June the 18th of 2014. I know that there's been the lady named Terry Morris that I'm going to get to in a minute and explain that, but I want you to take it into context so we can all understand it. What you're going to hear and what the evidence is going to be is that on June the 18th of 2014, after 2 in the morning, Mr. Holtzclaw, Daniel Holtzclaw, had worked that 8 to 4 shift that we talked about, and he works 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. He was tired, and it was something very unusual for him, but he was exhausted from everything he'd been going through. And he logged off his computer, and when he did that, it deactivates what's talked about, the ABL and all the other systems that are in the police car. There's not going to be any of these other counts or any other charges where this has occurred. When he does that, he's still a police officer. He's still in his car, and he's still in uniform with his gun and on and everything. But he's headed home, and as he's headed home, he notices a vehicle that's swerving all over the road, and he pulls that vehicle over, and that is Janine Liggins. That's the lady that gets this whole thing rolling here. What Mr. Giger left out for you, and that I think is very important to note, is that she says she's that third party friend at a third party friend's house, and she's over there, and she's just playing some dominoes and stuff. But when she's interviewed on the 18th of June 2014 about what happened and about her interaction with the Oklahoma City police officer, She tells this detective here, who's sitting here in the courtroom, Detective Davis, that she had smoked 2 marijuana joint cigarettes, and so she is high. Now later on, when she testifies, she says she just has a puff, but when she's immediately asked about upon when she's reporting this event, she says that she has smoked 2 marijuana cigarettes. In addition to that, she admits that she had taken, she says, some Tylenol PM or aspirin PM that makes you drowsy and sleepy. She said that all she had in her cup was some Kool-Aid. Now, fast forward to right a little bit after 2 in the morning. She's pulled over by Daniel Holtzclaw as he sees her swerving down 50th Street and activates his lights right after 50th. He pulls her over, has her, approaches and gets out and approaches the car. And he can notice something's just not right. But again, he knows all the paperwork he's going to have to go through, and the several hours it's going to take him if he's going to take someone to jail. So he's talking to her and telling her, "Hey, have you had anything to drink? What are you doing? Where are you headed?" And she's trying to explain to him, and then he says, "I don't." Then she says, "I don't have a driver's license. I don't have the legal authority to drive here in the city of Oklahoma or anywhere for that matter." Said, "Okay, well, go step back here in my squad car," and puts her in a squad car. And at this point, it is an arrestable offense. He goes back to her car and I'm sorry. He goes back to her car and checks it out to determine whether or not there's any illegal narcotics. And you've heard about the area he works in. It's not unusual for all of him to find something. And he's looking through her car and he notices a number of prescription bottles. But they're made out to Janine Liggins. And one of the prescription bottles is hydrocodone, a very well-known painkiller that is not only used here but all over the United States. He notices some other items, nothing that really gets him all riled up or anything. He goes back and tells Miss Liggins, "Listen, you don't have a driver's license. It's past 2 a.m. In the morning, and I don't think it's good for you to be out here on the road by yourself, and you need to go." Now, again, he doesn't have his AVL on. He's not radioing her in or anything like that, and he lets her go. There will be a videotape that will be introduced into evidence, and as Mr. Giger said, it's very fuzzy and very grainy. All you can really see is what appears to be an Oklahoma City police car with his lights going on, and you can see what appears to be a car in front of it. But other than that, in regards to any movement or anything, I would suggest it's virtually impossible to see anything. But it does confirm that there was a stop there at 50th and Lincoln. Daniel Holtzclaw goes ahead and goes on home. In the process of all this, you've heard the things that Ms. Liggins has done after the stop, because where she goes and reports a crime has been committed. Mr. Holtzclaw knows nothing about that. Daniel Holtzclaw comes back on the 18th at 4 in the afternoon for what's called a lineup. And it's a lot of like we're dealing with here today. Everyone lines up, and you're kind of a roll call, whether or not you're there or not. And Daniel Holtzclaw is dressed in his uniform, ready to go to work at 4 in the afternoon. And roll call, he's called out. He's told, "Hey, we've got some people here that want to see you." Well, Daniel Holtzclaw goes back, and there are 2 detectives that want to talk to him. And he knows that they're from the sex crimes because that's what they do. And everyone knows that in Oklahoma City. Then he goes in there and they have a video camera running, and they're videotaping everything that Daniel Holtzclaw is saying. And the very first thing they want to know is, did you come into contact with an individual by the name of Janie Liggins? Now, at this point in time, the evidence is crystal clear. They don't have a videotape from the area of 50th and Lincoln. He knows he didn't have on his AVL or any of his radio system, and he knows he didn't call it in. It was a very brief stop. So if at that point in time he could have easily said, I didn't stop anyone, don't know what you're talking about. No, I didn't. But he doesn't. He says, yeah, I pulled her over, and goes to the story I just told you. He tells them, I thought she was messed up. She swerved on the road. I was off duty. I logged out of my computer, pulled her over, checked her out, and let her go home. Well, we need your pants. We need all your uniform, need your badge, your gun, everything. You're on leave. And Daniel complies and gives them everything. They then want to talk to him more and get some more details about him, about his police activities and everything. And this interview goes on for a long period of time, and it's all videotaped. I will challenge at this point in time for the DA's office, for the police department, and for anyone that matters to bring one bit of evidence where Daniel Holtzclaw lied to the detectives at any time during the interview.
Mr. Giger, argument, Your Honor.
All right, sustained.
The evidence will be that he told the truth to every single question that was asked of him on June the 18th of 2014. And then after Daniel was put on leave, he's out of the picture. He doesn't have access to the computers. He doesn't have access to anything at the Oklahoma City Police Department. In fact, he's forbidden from doing anything like that, and he's forbidden from acting like a police officer. What happens then is how this thing gets out of control is during the investigation of Janie Liggins. They go back and they took a look at Daniel Holtzclaw, and of course, we talked about the AVL, that little GPS system that's in all the squad cars. Again, it has to be, your computer has to be logged in for it to be working. They go back to when he calls people in, like if he calls in John Smith, date of birth, and wants to run a records check. Well, they go in and they narrow it down for about 30 days to determine if basically any female he'd had contact with. And then they would follow up and do follow-up investigations. And again, on June the 18th of 2014, the only person in the world who's identified Daniel Holtzclaw or made a complaint to the Oklahoma City Police Department is Janie Liggins. No others. And then what happens is, and this is where the investigation and evidence, to be clear, this is where the investigation goes awry. When they approach a female individual that had any contact with Daniel Holtzclaw, they don't just go to them with an open-ended questions and ask them about have you had any contact with any officers or things of that nature. They go up and they say to each and every female that they could get their hands on. First, they had to locate them, which was difficult in that of itself. Whenever they could, and whenever they got a hold of them, they would say, "We have a tip that you have been sexually assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer." Wow. Now, a lot of women say that, I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing like that happened to me. But then we come down to 12. Let me start that again. But then we come down to actually the 12 that we're dealing with here today. And what that evidence is going to be replete and throughout all this is that each and every one of these people have street smarts like you can't even imagine. Now let's go back to the one that was Terry Morris. She's the one that they talk about that had actually made a complaint about being sexually assaulted prior to June the 18th. Let's put it into perspective. What actually happens on that day, is on May 24th, 2014, she's involved in a violent domestic dispute with another man, and it's in public. It's out there. It's out on the street, and she's admittedly been smoking crack, and she's out of it as other people have described. And when she's approached by the police and asked, and she knows she's going to jail, she's been down this road multiple times, convicted felon, looking at doing some serious time. And when she's approached by a police officer on May the 24th of 2014, is the very first time she ever says, "I was sexual assaulted and raped by an Oklahoma City police officer 2 days ago." 2 days ago. The police officer on the scene on May the 24th of 2014 calls in sex crimes detectives and says, "We have a potential victim by one of our own." So they take her story and they try to match it up with anything they can match up. Radio calls, CAD calls, Verona runs, AVLs, anything. And they can't find anything. And she's also saying it happens down here at the city rescue mission down here in downtown Oklahoma City, nowhere near the northeast side. Well, that doesn't fit. So they just move on and keep going to these other women. And she's just kind of hanging out there. And so they get to the other women. Then that very next woman that they find Shadarian Hill.
Can we stop a minute?
Yep,
yes, please.
Sure.
That's incorrect.
That's completely incorrect.
They can't. I mean, they have Sherry Ellis, who they see that he's done a Verona check on a few times, but they know that they can't really even have a case if they don't get Terry Morris on the hook. So they absolutely do not leave her alone. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and
it was maybe one of the biggest problems with this, with Scott's story, is that he didn't put enough significance on the importance of Terry Morris.
Yeah. Yeah, because and then he's going into Shardarian Hill, and I'm thinking, what the hell? That's why.
I think he's point for point. I don't know if he took notes during Giger's opening, but that's the direction Giger went.
Yeah, he probably just. Oh, these guys. I mean, he sounded good until just about now. He sounded okay, but now he's starting to get wonky. So.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, is that a case of this magnitude, to me, I'm not a lawyer. I've never had to face that kind of thing. I just try to equate that to some kind of situation where in my career I worked in flexographic and rotogravure printing for 25 plus years, and knowing how jobs worked and in that process, and I think about having a situation where it's like this for me, and not having just basically being alone trying to do it, and there's just absolutely no way. But the other end of that is I have to look at the scales of justice of how that weighs out. One trial with 13 accusers, and basically one lawyer. I mean, I'm sure he had. How many paralegals helps did he have? 2 or 3, maybe?
He had another lawyer. He had Robert Gray, and then I saw a female attorney's name listed early on, but I don't recall her being at the defense table. I could be wrong. Bates was there the whole time, the private investigator, and he was probably the biggest assistance to Scott Adams. I mean, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, well, just based on what we see with his podcast and everything that he's presented, I would have to agree with that. I don't have nowhere near the knowledge you have of the case, but that's what I see. But this lack of legal help, the presenting things to the court and the jury, I think the tact. I just think it was. I think it was a lost thing for Daniel from the outset, because everything was set up against him.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be that way.
Right.
It's supposed to be innocent, and you get a guy like this dickhead Geiger, please pardon my language, but the guy is a complete maniac as a prosecutor to me.
Yeah.
Well, I try to remember that how long it took me to um, wrap my mind around this whole case. And it was way over
Months.
a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say months and months, wasn't it? Months
It
and months
was.
had to
I
be.
mean, and still.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. I mean, and was this Scott Adams' only case at that time, or did he have? I can't imagine that he didn't have other things he still was committed to work on.
Right.
Yeah. Under Your Scars, Scott Adams is a
He was the
well-known
top
attorney.
one of the top 2 rated Oklahoma. Yeah,
Defense
his family
attorneys.
helped him get Scott Adams.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he's a very well-known and very well-respected and good attorney, defense attorney, but this case is just not winnable with just one.
No way. No, you're fine. You're saying exactly what I'm thinking. There was no way from the very outset everything was stacked against Daniel, and it's not supposed to be that way. I'm sorry, it's not.
No, it's definitely not. But that's not just an American thing. With the lawyers, excuse me, Luke Mitchell had one of the best lawyers that we had in Scotland at that time. He was the best in his field, and that Wayne got sent to jail for a minimum of 20 years. So they may be the best lawyers, but it doesn't mean to say that they get everything right or they say the right things. Like Rhonda says, he started off brilliant. He started saying, well, let me just inform you, Mr. Giger got things wrong. He told you this, he told you that. He should have kept going on the lines, I think, picking up on everything that Giger had said was wrong, and he's just kind of went off on a tangent in a sense. So just because they've got the best lawyers doesn't mean to say that they're going to win their case.
Yeah.
Well, no, especially when it's from the very outset. You got 13 of these people against one guy. The very odds of that, just looking at the outset, no matter basically what they produce, is a loser, especially in this kind of case. Sexual assault, abuse. He's got the power, they don't. He's got the gun, they don't. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Brian Bates, I can't remember if it was in an interview. I can't actually remember where I heard him say this. But he said basically the same thing. Daniel never had a chance. He was never going to be able to win this.
No.
The media had already convicted him.
Yeah.
The Me Too movement was.
Oh, yes.
Black Lives Matter had just fired up and were really getting going for legitimate reasons. But, like some of those organizations, they don't look at each individual case. They kind of have a mission of police officers screwing with black citizens. Check. Screw.
Well, yeah, they all get painted with the same brush.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate.
You can't do that.
Well, I mean, it makes advocacy kind of a joke.
But it does. It robs them of their specific. It should be a specific mission, and each case is unique, and it has to be taken on its merits. It can't just be, well, say we got another cop over here, and just believe what others that were there had a reason to do that. I've always believed. I believed really from the outset that the Oklahoma City police and government were trying to diffuse any potential situations with the Black Lives Movement, the Me Too movement, all that. They were trying to diffuse that by stringing Daniel up and hanging him from the highest tree, which is exactly what,
Yeah.
to me, that's what they did.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were going after. They weren't caring whether he was innocent or no. It was the sign
Yep.
of the times, and everything like that as well, you know.
Yep.
And I mean, you're right, Jack. Yeah, he lost right from the beginning. You know, like you say, he had one, maybe two lawyers at most having to go through all that information on 13 different witnesses and accusers and everything like that. You know what I mean? That's a lot for one man to do.
No way. That's absolutely
But
no way. There's too much detail.
yeah, yeah. But in saying that, he was being paid to do his job. And if part of his job is hiring people to help him go through that information, then that's what he needed to do. I mean, in my opinion, Daniel was let down by his lawyer, period. And I mean, I'll give him his due. Yeah, he tried, but it's the same when it comes to we can't tar every police officer with the same brush. Well,
Right.
I'm sorry, but sometimes we can, because those good officers that see the bad shit happening with the bad apples don't open their mouth and say anything. So to me, they're just as bad. You know what I mean? If it was maybe made easier for them to come forward, maybe anonymously, you know, or something like that. But it needs to be made easier for decent cops, because there are decent cops. Yes,
Yes.
there are. But
Absolutely.
when they stay quiet and they stay, it makes them complicit. You know, there needs to be an avenue for them to be able to go somewhere to report without getting the repercussions that comes along with that. You know.
Yeah, I agree. It's very difficult for cops, and many of our almost, I don't know how many, 4,000, or I don't know how many, I'm saying that wrong. However many police departments across our country, and it's around the world, it's not just here, be able to come forward without putting themselves or their family at risk and their career, um, to right a wrong if somebody's being railroaded. And I mean, there's still information. I'm sure Kay could probably speak a lot more to this than I ever could. It's the same way in the Avery and Dassey cases. Information you can't get. The lawyer was never given. I think one of the things was, when did um, Rocky and Bullwinkle pull the AVO? I really pull the AVO records, because
Yeah,
I think that was, there's a lie about that, right, Kay?
well,
Or you
they
don't
just,
really know.
they're saying that Kim's saying, "Oh, I documented, I think she gave 5 different dates that she pulled AVL." When Scott Adams asked, this is during trial actually, because they keep talking about the AVL, the AVL, the AVL. So
Right.
Scott sends a letter asking for when the AVL was pulled and by who. And apparently Rocky was out of town, so Kim says. So she just, went through her girls and gave 5 dates and said she didn't have documentation of the other. Well, I mean, I guess Scott Adams didn't know or didn't understand how how the software works with programs like these.
Right.
There are edit logs. There
should be an audit trail.
There is.
Audit
I mean,
log.
every key strike, they should be able to tell you who performed every key strike at what time. So
That's
they
right.
should be able, they got away with not producing a report. And I mean, I believe his letter asked for the right stuff, but he didn't, when he only got this bullshit report with 5 dates and a note that Rocky was out of town and this is all that I documented. He didn't say that's not what I'm talking about.
Right. He should have pushed it further, even if he had went to the judge and said, "Look, they're not providing me with what I've asked for," and
But
forced the issue.
Kim knew that she knew what she was doing. So that is misconduct right there.
It is. It's malfeasance. I mean, to me it is, but
well, it absolutely is. I mean, I know she's not very techno, but she knew she knew that she was hiding that. She knows.
Absolutely.
She's been doing this for long enough. She's been in enough trials where things like that have come into play. You cannot tell me that she didn't know what she was doing. And just to think that she outsmarted Scott Adams is scary as shit.
It is. But then again, I think that this being overwhelmed with, whatever was in Scott's mind, because I think he is a good lawyer in any given specifics. I think if he had, if this had been split up, that he had, 3, maybe 4 at most of these accusers, another lawyer had another, and so on and so forth, that they all were responsible for. And, maybe he could...
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe if he was, even if he had the 3 or 4, he still was the main lawyer, the lawyer that was responsible for the other 2 and checking their work, but he didn't have to have all the detail that they would go and get.
I'm not exactly sure how old Scott Adams is, but I would guess that he's not, he definitely wasn't using computers in high school. Were they using computers like we do now when he was in college and law school? I think his practice looks a lot different than an attorney's practice that's just coming out of law school now would look, as far as not relying on computers for everything as much. Maybe I'm completely off base, but I just got that feeling from something that I read in the trial transcript, and I can't even remember what it is.
Yeah, it seemed like he has a real lack of understanding, as you said, how these systems work. That's what I'm getting from it.
And I think that's where, and you can't, you seriously can't push everything onto Brian Bates because, it's so obvious how much work he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
You don't understand the amount of work that Brian Bates would have had to have done until you have a good understanding of this whole case.
Oh, you could just look at, if you just, listen to any number of his podcasts, he did that. I know from just doing lives and streaming myself, it's very difficult. It's a lot of work. A lot of work, I can tell you it is. And you guys know as well, right? I know Rhonda knows. I know you know. Cherie, you guys have helped put this stuff together. And just imagine going and having, and all the other extra things that he did in relation to that as well.
Well, but Jack, we're not very techno either, so.
And we most of the time are rolling uphill.
I know exactly how you feel.
We don't want to be compared to your podcasts.
Yeah. And besides that, Kay does most of the work.
Well, that's not true.
That is very true.
It's not only a fact of putting this stuff together, it's the fact of being able to get your hands on it. That's another whole
exactly.
That's the other end of it. Right now, I'm still waiting on. There were jail calls from Avery during trial. That was February and March of 2007. Now these were records requested, of course, long ago. But for February and March, we have almost no calls during trial. However, if you watch Making a Murderer, he made several calls during trial, and we don't have them. And we just say, oh, well, we blah, blah, blah. Well, it's complete bullcrap. So I did a records request back last August for these calls that we don't have, that Rieger just seems to just want to say, no, you can't have them. And the new sheriff, uh, his excuse, I still don't have them. His excuse is, well, they'll play, but we're having trouble getting them burned off into a CD. But it's the exact same system as they used at the time. It's the same, thanks for using Aerocom. It's the same system. So what's the problem?
I think the problem is you need an attorney.
Well, I got one of those.
I mean, people have been, I've been reading about people who are suing agencies for not turning over open records, and they're winning.
Yep,
they're winning
absolutely.
lawsuits that are like tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
That'd buy a lot of records.
It would. It'd buy a ton of records.
Hell yeah.
Rhonda, Under Your Scars had asked another question you had up a minute ago.
Let's see. I think I put it on the screen.
You did.
Was it this one? No. Oh, I can't remember where it is or what it was. Dang it.
I'm looking. Oh, sounds like as a newer officer, he maybe had a few that didn't like him, so found a way. That was another aspect Under Your Scars that I've also thought about, that he had somehow made some enemies. I mean, I don't know Daniel. You'd have to ask Kay and Rhonda and others that have conversed with him, but he sounded like a good guy to me.
But that doesn't make sense if you start at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, I know when you don't start at the beginning and try to think about it, you think of all these different motives.
Yeah.
But how could Janie Liggins have set him up? I mean, he didn't get set up pulling her over. He was on his way home. He turned his computer off like they proved at trial. He does every time when he leaves the office. He shuts down at some point on the way home.
There was only like just a few that he didn't turn it off till he got home, right? Only just a few.
No, I mean, he wasn't pulling anyone over after work. Janie Liggins was the only after-hours traffic stop he ever did. But the point is, he was in the habit of turning his stuff off.
Right.
And like, how would she have set him up? I mean, she swerved, he pulled her over. No other officers, even if someone didn't like him.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe someone didn't like him who suggested looping Terry Morris into the fold, and that could have been Rob High.
Right.
That's the only person I can find any kind of, but I mean, I don't find anything that shows they were in gang unit when Daniel did his little stint in gang unit.
I don't know. It just seemed like that they used this, and somebody, whoever, I'm going to say up the food chain, says, "Hey, if maybe we can use this as a test case to ward off what may be coming," because they certainly had the rumblings in Oklahoma City, just like every other big city at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they knew they had to sacrifice him.
Yeah.
And get a conviction. They didn't want to be like some of these other cases that were happening around the United States where they weren't holding the police officer accountable. He got cleared of the charges, so now there were riots and the city's burning.
That's right.
They didn't want that. And yeah, I mean, we're going to look at the timeline a different way down the road here, and we're going to see like all the little communications that Daniel had where like he wasn't doing this right, or he wasn't doing that right, or this person says this about him, or he's in a he's out on a call in a hand-to-hand combat with someone he's trying to take into custody that's resisting, and another officer doesn't assist him because he doesn't want to get in the mix. There ends up being a deal over Daniel being pissed off at that officer.
I don't blame him. I mean, and that, to me, I think that's almost a fireable offense for most police departments if that officer doesn't help his fellow officer.
Yeah, I mean, they end up whitewashing it.
Jesus Christ. Of course they did.
That's what happened. And then manipulating Daniel and telling him, you did a great job out there. Keep up the good work.
That's terrible.
The supervisor even says in an email that I took that part off about officer, I can't think of his name right now. I took that part off of the report about officer so-and-so not helping with the fight until the tow truck driver told him he needed to get in there and help his fellow officer.
Fellow officer.
He said, because I've handled that, so I took that off the memo. It's like, okay, there's no documentation of that now.
That should have been a red mark on that officer's record.
It's only, I mean, no one would know about it if some emails hadn't been produced.
It's terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Anyway, we should get back to this.
Yeah, let's get back. Where are we at? Pop back up. If you want to send me the file, that's fine. I'm okay with that, Rhonda. Up to you.
I did send you the file.
Did you?
In our private DM.
Well, I'm just a dumbass. I'm just a double dumbass.
It's a double dummy. Double dummy.
Yeah.
It's the second one that you should have there.
In Discord?
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
I did. I know I did.
What a double dummy. Wow.
No, you had just woken up from a nap, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, a good one too. That was it.
Yeah, apparently.
I promise you, I'm hurrying, Kay, I swear.
Oh, I'm just messing with you. I don't care.
Okay. What page are we on?
We are on page 16 of the defense.
Oh. 16. Okay, I'm on line 5. Is that right?
I think it's line 5.
Yeah, line 5. Okay. All right, I'm ready. Here we go. And so, as they get other women, then that very next woman that they find this Shadarian Hill, and she's the one up at the Liberty Station Apartments that we've heard. And it's a drug infested, it's crime infested, and the evidence will be that you wouldn't even think about going over there at nighttime. But what they don't tell you is that what really happened about Shadarian Hill incident. What happens there is Daniel Holtzclaw pulls up in a squad car along with another guy in a different squad car, another Oklahoma City police officer, and they're doing what policemen do. They're just patrolling the neighborhood, making sure that we can live our lives and we'll go around without getting shot or drugs or whatever, anything bad. They're trying to protect us. And that's what they're sworn to do. And he looks over and he sees a truck and he sees it's filled with smoke. And Daniel Holtzclaw, at this point, has been on the force for a little bit over a year, and he thinks, well, that's probably not looking good right now. And so he approaches the truck along with the other officer. and he taps on the window. And again, this apartment complex is designed one way in and one way out for a specific reason because of where it is. And when they roll down the window, Daniel Holtzclaw immediately smells PCP. And PCP, the evidence will be, is one of the most powerful hallucinogenic drugs known to man. It's like a synthetic LSD. And there's a number of ways that it's highly addictive. It makes people extremely irrational. And it can be ingested and it can be smoked. You can actually even rub it on your skin and get high. In fact, when they have spills of PCP in the Oklahoma City Police Department, they call out the hazmat team, those guys in the big full body suits to clean it up because it's so dangerous. Well, Daniel Holtzclaw can smell the PCP blowing out of the car window with Ms. Hill. And by the way, PCP is a felony in the state of Oklahoma and every other state of our union. And she has a record that will defy logic that you will get to see. And so, as she's getting out of the car, the passenger, or herself, pours a vial of PCP all over her pants. So now her pants has this substance on it that if you touch with your bare hands, the chances of you going bonkers is about 100%. So they know that they have a very delicate and serious situation. So while the passenger of the vehicle that had the PCP in it is being dealt with, the other patrol officers, Officer Holtzclaw's duty is to take care of Shadarian Hill. And now she got the PCP on her, and she knows she's been smoking it. So immediately they call EMSA. And EMSA comes upon the scene and takes Shadarian Hill and puts her on a gurney and rushes her to the Southwest Medical Center here in Oklahoma City. Unfortunately, the hospital has seen this type of song and dance before. And they have a little wash down bay where people who have PCP on them or any other substances as dangerous as PCP, they literally take all your clothes off and make you stand where they hose you down and clean all the substance off your body so it doesn't absorb into your skin. You can even OD from it. So that happens. Ms. Hill says that while all these nurses and doctors and all the other hospital staff are standing around holding her down, and she notices Daniel Holtzclaw is over there looking at her while she's naked and high on PCP. What they didn't tell you, and what they forgot to tell you, and I'm talking about the government, was at that same time that she is right before she's taken by the hospital for spilling the PCP on her body, a female officer shows up on the scene. And they know they're getting ready to transfer her to the hospital and say, you need to search this lady. We don't feel very comfortable about it. She's wigged out and she's drugged out and we need to check her out. So the female officer goes into her pockets and finds another vial of PCP. And PCP, for the people who aren't very familiar with it, or lucky enough not to be familiar with it, is a liquid. It looks like water. And that's typically what it's called on the streets is water. And the typical way most PCP addicts do it is they take a cigarette and they dip it in the PCP and then they smoke it. And that's what gets them high. However, she has this vial of PCP and the female officer lays the PCP very gently on the hood of the squad car, while they're effectuating, making sure that she has no other narcotics or weapons on her before they transport her to the hospital. While they're in the process of securing her and trying to save her life, she bends over with her mouth and grabs the PCP vial with her lips, puts it in her mouth, and crunches the vial of PCP in her mouth. And she swallows some and then she spills some out. So now we have an individual who has smoked it and has ingested it and who has poured it on her body. And she ends up where she needs to be in the hospital. After she gets hosed down and she's still high, they put a gown on her and at first they put her in a room right outside the nurses' station where all the nurses are. And unfortunately, we've probably all been to the hospital and seen that. There's all these nurses out there, and they have her in this room. While they have her in this room, they hook her up to the heart monitors and all the other monitors that the hospital hook you up to, oxygen levels and everything, so they can monitor all this. After a very brief period of time in that room, they move her just right down the hall to another observation room, again, with all the same monitors on while she's tripping on PCP. While she's laying there tripping on the PCP and they're monitoring her, all her vital signs, she says that Daniel Holtzclaw keeps telling her in a lewd way that your breasts are showing. So here's Mr. Holtzclaw, who they want you to believe is a sexual predator, telling a lady who's high on PCP, you might want to cover her up. But she says he doesn't stop there, that he starts talking to her because she has some warrants out. And he's just caught her on a felony possession of PCP amongst some other things. And so she says that he walks over to her and starts massaging her breast while she's being monitored with all this stuff, with all these wires and the heart monitor and everything that's going on. That he's rubbing around on her. Then, under her version of events, he gets the bright idea to take out his penis and shove it in her mouth and tells her, be sure to keep that heart rate down while I'm doing this to you. Keep that heart rate down. We don't want to notify the nurses that are on duty right now. We don't want any alarms going off. So keep that heart rate down so somehow the evidence will be in a monk-like fashion. She keeps her heart rate down so it never trips off anybody in the hospital, anything's going on. Forget the fact that the door is either wide open or a doctor or nurse or anyone could come in at any given time. Seriously, you just can't make this shit up. You just can't. She did say that, right? She did tell Blinker and Bullwinkle that she.
Yes.
This is what Daniel said to her.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Oh my fucking god, man. If I need to listen to any more of this fucking dribble, I'm going to fling my fucking tablet off the wall. How the fuck did these fucking people believe this bullshit that is coming out of this fucking courtroom?
I don't know. Maybe they were more concerned about the people chanting outside.
My god, man, there is so much drivel in it. It is unfucking believable. I'm so angry with what I'm fucking hearing. I really am. And I know this is Daniel's player, but I'm still raging. This even got as far as what it fucking got, and that man is sitting in a jail cell for 260 fucking 3 years for this pish.
I know. I get it. It's horrible.
Crazy. It is. Okay. I'll continue on. Line 10. But she says he goes even further while she's high on the PCP. She says that he takes off his gun belt. And if you've seen a gun belt, one of these Oklahoma City police officers, they've got guns, they've got magazines, they have baton sticks, they have light, they have flashlights, they have handcuffs, and everything else in the world. But she says he just whips it off, lays it down on the chair, and then starts letting her give him oral sex. In the meantime, he decides that that isn't enough for him, so he decides he's going to take his fingers and insert them underneath her gown into her vagina. Again, while she's keeping her heart rate down, her heart rate and all the other vital signs down, so it doesn't alert anyone. Of course, Daniel Holtzclaw denies any of that happening, but what we do know happened is that she was at the Southwest Medical Center, and we do know for a fact that he was observing Miss Hill while she was high on PCP, as he is required to do, and keep her in his eyesight, and he's required to do so. And we do know that while she's there, another police officer brings another person who's in custody to the hospital to be treated. And what we also know for a fact that without any question that that other police officer's person that was arrested decides that they're going to run and run away from the hospital, and they do. And we found out that Daniel Holtzclaw is then asked, "Help me, I've got a runner." Daniel Holtzclaw takes off the door out of the hospital and helps this other officer apprehend the runner while he's allegedly molesting Miss Hill. We all know that happened. Then he supposedly come back and continues these activities with Miss Hill. Then, without any question, we know that Officer Holtzclaw then transport Miss Hill to the Oklahoma County Jail. For anyone who's unfamiliar with it, it's the big structure right down here, about 9 stories high. Actually, 11, but it's right down here. The big red brick building. And he pulls pulls her in there after he's allegedly done all these things to her, and he books her in on a felony possession charges. And when he books her in on the felony possession charges, someone along the way decides that she's a little bit more than just a felon in possession of drugs. She's actually intending to distribute them, and that's why they charge her. That's what they charge her with. And she stays in jail for 5 days. And for 5 days, she can't make bond because the bond is so high on possession with intent to distribute drugs in our community. But she eventually does make bond at 5 days. And what she's going to tell you is that after 5 days in the Oklahoma County Jail, she's still high. She's still high on PCP after 5 days. That's Miss Hill. He also told you about another individual by the name of Tabitha Barnes and how she lives over on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. And he said it's a drug house. She lives it's a drug house, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it is. It's a house where people go and smoke crack cocaine, snort cocaine, inject drugs. That's what they do. That's how they survive. And so he tells you that somehow Officer Holtzclaw, again, none of these people have come forward. They're all approached by detectives. They don't come. They never report any of this stuff. It's always the detectives going to them. But they tell you about how she is out warming up her car in the winter, and that Officer Holtzclaw pulls up, and after getting rid of the kids and another person, that he somehow decides it's a good time to go ahead and feel her breast. 2 months. But what they fail to tell you is immediately after this breast touching incident that she says happened after she's approached months later by the police is the very next day that her house is actually literally burglarized. And someone broke in and stole a bunch of their stuff, and she calls the police, and the police come. And when she's telling the police about my house getting broken into, they stole this and stole that. She fails to mention this alleged molestation by Mr. Holtzclaw, or anyone else for that matter. But it's about a month later, Daniel Holtzclaw's on patrol, and he knows that Tabitha Barnes' house has been burglarized in the past. And he's trying to be a vigilant cop, and the evidence will be crystal clear. Her door is wide open. Her door is open, and he radios it in, and he's going to go up and check a known drug house. And he's going to go up and see what's going on. So the police officer, as he's driving by in his squad car, and he sees the door open, he parks right in front of her house, and he walks into her house announcing, "Police, Oklahoma City Police," as I would think we would all want to do if our door was wide open. And he walks in, and he sees this individual laying on the couch, and he shines the light on him, and he says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Terry Williams." He said, "Well, come on out with me. I'm going to check you out and make sure you are who you say you are." He takes him out there, and he gets on the computer and runs him and figures out, yeah, he's Terry Williams. He just happens to be a registered sex offender. Just happens to be living in that house, and tells Officer Holtzclaw he is with children of Tabitha Barnes who also lived there, and he'll tell you it's okay. his probation officer told him it's okay for him to sleep in the same house with kids, and that's all okay. But also Holtzclaw's reading the Veruna sheet, seeing all the stuff this guy's done, and he knows he's probably up to no good, and he tells him, I don't want to see you around here anymore. And he gets back in his squad car and he drives off. And they want to act like that's all. And evidence will be that that's supposed to be some sort of harassment. Then they tell you about Daniel Holtzclaw coming by again later on, coming up and knocking on Tabitha Barnes' door. Community policing, saying, hey, is everything going okay? And she's on the phone with her mother. He doesn't barge in, break the door open, or anything. She says, no, everything's cool. I'm good. And he leaves. And the ABL will show all this. Will show us a very brief stop, and he's gone. But then, again, he's stalking. Then we talk about Florence Matthews. And I think that this is Mr. Giger's word.
Sorry, Jack, I'm going to pause here for a second.
Yeah.
So I got to go back. Let me get back to this part. So this is on March 26th that Galen Giger talked about. In her police report, she claims that he goes up to the door and he's banging on the door. And you need to let me in. I need to come and search your house. And she calls her mother, or her mother's on the phone or whatever. And then she says, but this time he was in the old police car, the black and white police car. If that's the case, that an officer approached her house on March 26th in an older police vehicle, there's no Veruna traffic for Daniel in that area that day. And not Veruna, AVL. I don't remember exactly, but I don't recall for sure if in his ABL for that day, if his actual patrol car did show up there or not. I need to go back and find out and look at it. But if what she was saying is true, that an officer went up and pulled up to her house on the March 26th, and if it was Daniel, he was not in the older black and white police car. He was in his regular black police car with the white letters. So I need to go check the ABL on her police report, and I'll report back to you at some point in the future. I just had to say that.
It was 20 degrees on February 27th when they were going to get ice cream at midnight.
Yeah, like I told you before, Tabitha Barnes is the story that is probably one of the most difficult ones to tell because it's so twisted. She claims there's 3 separate encounters, and only 2 of them involved any sort of assault. So it's Tabitha Barnes. When we get to her in the timeline and we start talking about her, that's going to take us a few weeks to get through, just when we're doing that later. Sorry, Jack, go ahead.
You know, it's hard for y'all to hear me when I'm muted. Sorry. I was pouring a cup of coffee and I didn't want to make a bunch of racket
I was going to say,
while you were
I
talking.
figured you were muted.
Yeah. Just a second. All right. Let me get back over here. All right. We're going to, where are we at? Line 6, is that right? Or at the top of the page? Oh, it's line 1, right? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jack. Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I was muted too. I'm sorry. Yes, that's fine.
Rhonda needs to scroll down to the next page.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. All right,
are you reading from mine still, Jack?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. We're on line 1. Go ahead. Carry on.
Then we talked about Florence Matthews. And I think this is Mr. Geiger's words, Mr. Giger's words, is that she was drinking and she's a crack addict. She is. And again, she never comes forward until the police come to her and after it's been on the media and everything else. Then we come up, another one that you're going to hear right after Miss Mathis is a lady by the name of Rosetta Great. And to give you an example of what we're dealing with and what I say when I'm talking about a street education and what you're going to hear, and the evidence is going to be, is that prior to her ever running into Daniel Holtzclaw, he was, and the evidence will be very vigilant cop. He was around, all around the northeast side of the time, all the time. He wasn't afraid of anything or anyone, and he was going in and out and driving around by himself. He didn't care. He was proud of what he did. He was proud to wear the badge. But you're going to hear about what Rosetta does, and she had, Rosetta. First of all these people for the main part all have what are known as AKAs. They all go by several different names, and it's hard to keep them all straight. But for instance, she'll maybe have 5 separate AKAs, also known as, and you got to go through all that. But what Miss Gretz does is she's a passenger in a vehicle that's pulled over by another Oklahoma City cop. This is a couple months prior to her even meeting Mr. Holtzclaw. And of course, she has warrants out and everything else in the world, convicted, and goes on and on and on. She's sitting in the back seat of a car. The police officer comes up trying to do his job, say, "Hey, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name?" And he gets everybody's name and goes back to his vehicle and decides to run everyone to see if there's any that will, what we will call wants or warrants. And as he does that, he gets down to Miss Great. And of course, she gave him a fake name. On their system, she shows fake name. Here's really her name, blah, blah, blah. This is all about her. While he's doing that, and it seems a little comical, but this is the truth. Here comes a fire engine coming by full speed with lights and sirens. Right behind him is an ambulance, lights and sirens. Behind that is another Oklahoma City squad car, lights and sirens. And he's sitting there with this silly traffic stop thinking, what in the world's going on? He radios into dispatch and they tells him where he is and what is all this activity going on here. Well, the dispatcher tells him, we were just notified that there was 8 people fighting a block and a half from you. Hold it, more information is coming in. A gun has been pulled, someone is shot. This is an officer talking to dispatch and is being told someone is shot. Well, this happens to be an officer who's been on the street for a little while, and he has a little street credibility now. He has a little street knowledge, a little education. Says, really? Give me the phone number where that call's coming from, because they'd called 911. They said, here's the phone number, such and such, and he says, okay, writes it down. Strolls back to the car, kind of stands there, gets out his cell phone and just calls the number that called 911, just kind of stares at the car. What do you think happens? Rosetta Great's phone starts ringing. She knew that if she would call 911 and report a fight, she needed to escalate it. A gun. No, I need to get all the way to a shooting to get this madman off me. She reports a shooting at the back seat of a car. He's got pulled over, trying to get him pulled off the call so that she can go on about her merry way. This is something that she did in a split second. Wow, I did not know that.
That seems weird. What? Can you read line 18 again? Or 17? I can't really see it now. The wording of that sounded weird. Like that she was reporting the the shot in the back seat.
Yeah, well, I'll start up here on 15 because that's the full thing. She reports a shooting at the back seat of a car. He's got pulled over, trying to get him pulled off the call so that she can go on about her merry way.
So what happened was she reported that at Will Carter's house, her house, over on Culbert, 633 Culbertson, which she's really near her house where she's pulled over. So she's reporting it knowing that
Cops
all
will
the
respond.
cops are going to come right by there.
Absolutely.
And that since he's in the area, he'll likely get called to assist. So the way he says that, though, makes me think that she's saying that someone's reporting
shot in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
Well, and there's no punctuation to help, break that up either, but it is bad wording. But there's also a news report of that. I've shown it before on other podcasts I've done, probably the ones I've done about Rosetta Gray. There's actually a news report about that fake call. So
they're interviewing Will Carter, and he says, "Yeah, she's slick. She's a criminal.
She's a criminal. Yeah,
they need to get her off the street before she hurts herself."
You, I know she's a woman, but I can tell you that takes some balls right there.
She's a ballsy woman.
Telling you, she may not be techno, but man, that takes some nuts right there. Pardon my line of thought there. Anyway, all right, let's continue. Line 20. That's what I'm talking about when you're dealing, and the evidence will be absolutely crystal clear. You're dealing with people that you can't even remotely think the way they think. And the evidence will be overwhelming about that. And that's one example of many that you will hear in this courtroom. She's then eventually charged with the false information. Ms. Gray also, at that point in time, had many, many felony convictions. She was facing felony charges. The very minimum she was looking at was 20 to life on some current charges she was looking at. And what the evidence will be was after they get her to say something about Daniel Holtzclaw, then all of her multiple felonies and everything she's done, they literally throw it out the window. And they say, I'll tell you what, you've been in jail for a while. We're going to give you two in and 2 out. You've already done a little bit of time, so credit for time served. Well, there's currently a warrant pending for her arrest today, or there was last week, and we'll find out when she takes the stand if there still is. Is that true? She had multiple felonies and they threw them out for her testimony?
Yes. Well, that's not like a deal like, hey, we're going to do this for you. But it is what happened. The felonies, she got suspended sentences on suspended sentences on things that should have had a motion to accelerate. She just got another suspension.
So it's not like a backroom deal was struck.
Well, there were many of those.
And then there's no evidence of it other than you can look back in the police records and see that things were dismissed and whatnot. But yeah, there were things disappeared for these ladies. That's all I'll say.
That's quite amazing. I got to tell you. And that would take Giger's involvement or some other prosecutor, I would imagine.
Yeah, the DA's office for sure. Prater was involved, I have no doubt.
Oh, of course.
Speculating.
Yeah, right. Okay, where am I at? Line 15.
15.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Then we jump back to Terry Morris. And she's the one that had called, the one that was accosted about that domestic abuse that you weren't told about in the state's opening. When she was accosted about the domestic abuse, remember, she said it happened downtown. Well, that didn't fit with anything that they could find after Janie Liggins came on board. So they started going back to her, and it took several times going back to her. Well, we just can't find anything. We just can't locate anything. Well, it didn't happen there. It happened here. No, we don't show any ABL there, so it can't be there. Are you sure you weren't over maybe by Liberty Station Apartments? Well, does the ABL say I was over there? Well, I don't know. Well, okay, I was at Liberty Station Apartments, and I didn't tell you that part because of the people I love. I really, he's expendable, but the ones she loves aren't. So let's protect them and the drug dealer and everything else. But let's not protect the Oklahoma City finest. Let's go protect the drug dealers. And that's what you're going to hear from the stand. Also, Janie Liggins reports this on June the 18th of 2014. What you're going to hear is they processed her car for DNA and prints. They also processed Officer Holtzclaw's squad car because what she says is required to put her hands on the squad car while she was during the stop. They don't ever find any of her DNA anywhere. Mr. Giger also says they don't find anyone's DNA except for Ms. Gardner. That's the 17-year-old that we haven't really talked much about, but I'm going to. And she's the one that kind of comes in late in the game because if you believe the government's theory, there's 3 separate women that all happened literally within a 4-hour period leading up to Janie Liggins. What Ms. Gardner, what you're going to find out about her is that she was reported as a runaway by her mother, who she had literally just beat the crap out of. Hit her 4 or 5 times in the face. And the mother says that she had reported her as a runaway. However, when Officer Holtzclaw was not there, and if you'll recall in Ms. Giger's opening, he kept telling you she had no warrants. She had no warrants. She had warrants, and I'll show you the warrants. The proof is going to be she did have warrants. But Officer Holtzclaw, when he came in contact with her the first time, when she was around there, those other individuals, remember him telling you that she had she was a 17-year-old and she had all sorts of problems and she'd been through a lot and all these things. Well, yeah, she was out in the public. She was out in the public street late at night with some friends who were in a fight. They were in a fist fight. And lo and behold, and God forbid, but the Oklahoma City officers showed up to figure out what's going on. We're having a little melee out there on the road. And Holtzclaw separates everybody to try to get their story of what was going on there. And he gets all their names and he runs them all through Varuna and all those systems we've heard about. And he sees where Ms. Gardner, where she actually has a warrant for trespassing. And he tells her, listen, I'm not going to take you in on that. I'm going to let you go. Just go get that deal handled. Just go get that deal handled here shortly. I mean, you look like you can get it. Just get it together and go get it handled. Then he goes on about his patrol. Several hours later, he runs into her again. And then again, she's 17 years old, and again, she's not showing up anywhere in Oklahoma City that's being reported as a runaway, although her mother says she has reported her, but she's not in the computer system. And we'll back that up. And it's not anywhere, and he doesn't know that. But she says, hey, can I have a ride home? He says, sure, I'll take you home. And that's part of the community policing that we have here. And so he has her get in the back of the squad car, and he takes her to what she says is her address. And he takes her there, and it's kind of described by Mr. Giger that maybe a little bit more crude than that, but in any event, when she gets to the front door, he follows her as any responsible officer would do to make sure that she really does live there. But when she gets there, she doesn't have the key. And he said, I really don't have any proof that you live here. And she says, well, I do. And he goes, well, I'm going to have to search you first of all, to see if there's anything on you. And then he does a pat. Yeah.
Am I? Oh man, this is another case of Scott Adams just not having prepared himself, because I don't believe it happened that way. He had already, and Kay will, and I heard this from Kay, and she'll back this up, but Daniel didn't put, and most police officers never put somebody in the back of their patrol car, whether they're just seating them back there while they run their names or whatever, or if they're going to transport them. So they never will put them back in their squad, in the back of their squad car, without searching them first. They have to make sure before they put them in the back of the squad car that they're not carrying any weapons or anything that they could hurt them with. So this is some really poor planning about this particular part of this story.
Yeah, trial prep.
Yeah, trial prep. Thank you. So, because it didn't happen that way. If he's searching, he didn't. I mean, Scott Adams is saying that he searched her at the door to make sure see if there's anything on her. Well, he had already done that.
Scott. And that's her story.
And that's her story.
That was her story.
Yeah.
That's not what Daniel said.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, and even if Daniel didn't remember some of these particular women because of the number of people he had contact with on a daily basis, he did know the things that he did. And that's if anyone gets outside of his sight for 2 seconds after he searched them, if he's going to put them in the back of his car, he's going to search them again.
Yeah.
I think that's within, I think that's within any officer, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
typically I think so.
Well, I mean, can you imagine getting shot in the back of the head because you didn't search the person?
Exactly.
Well, he didn't have these people in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they could have had a knife or anything like that. Any decent cop. I don't care what country it is you're in. It happens here as well. If you get stopped by the cops, or if you're in a fight or an argument or something like that, and they are called out, and you're getting huckled away by the cops, they're searching you. They're making you empty your pockets before you get in the van, their motor, or anything.
Yeah.
And they'll take it off you. You know, and that's just common sense for any police that is going to be putting somebody in their back of their motor or their van or whatever. I mean, not necessarily a van, because the vans that we've got here they're like, it's like inside them, it's like cages, it's like separate cages, so that they can put a few in at the same time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and keep them separate. But when it comes to something like that as well, I mean, if you don't search a prisoner or a person that you've apprehended, and then you put them into the back of your van, and you put them in there with somebody else, and they've got a shiv or a blade or whatever on them, you know, then it's not just you, it's the person in the back of the other person in the back of the van and all. So common sense with any police tells you they're going to search anybody who goes into the motor. Period.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah. All right. Line 23. And then he does a pat-down search, which is going to become very important in a minute. And he says, before I let you go, I want someone's phone number inside that house. And she said, okay, I'll give you my mom's phone number. And so he writes down mom and her phone number. Says, okay, you be good and stay out of trouble. And he leaves. Well, she somehow, I don't know if she goes in or leaves or does what, but she says that he sexually assaults her on the front porch. You're going to see all the pictures of when you can clearly see the neighbor's house is right there. I mean, within feet of it. But in any event, Mr. Holtzclaw follows through with his promise as a good police officer. It's what you would expect a police officer to do when he drops a 17-year-old kid off at somebody's house who can't prove that they really live there. He dials that phone. He dials that phone number to see whether or not she really lived there. And when he does, he gets a cussing unlike we've ever heard. It was
Oh
about
Lord,
midnight.
this timeline is messed up. This is
It's-
making me crazy.
Yeah, it's a little
No.
cringy. It's for
It's
yeah.
bad. It's
Okay, I'm gonna
bad.
be quiet.
No,
You're
it's
fine.
okay.
Interrupt me. You interrupt me whenever you want. It doesn't bother me. It was about midnight when he called. He was checking up. Before he can even get the words out, I could, but I'm not going to repeat what he's told, and they hang up on him. He forgets about it. To him, it's irrelevant. It's just, what am I supposed to do? He drives around and goes on home. Well, what you're going to hear about that DNA is taken off him is on the 18th is we've all seen the quote unquote CSI shows. This isn't CSI, and it's not going to be like what you think it is. The DNA experts are going to tell you on females, they cannot tell you if it's vaginal fluid or whether it's skin cells, and they're going to tell you is that each and every one of you, including myself, shed between 3 and 500,000 skin cells a day, and it would be very common for police officers conducting any kind of search to get your skin cells or my skin cells on them if they're going to search you or search me. And then if Officer Holtzclaw, after he searched her, which he admits he did, he admits that he came into contact with every single one of these women. He admits it. He's never denied it. And if he gives them a search, he searches them and their clothing and their bags and everything else. You're going to expect he's going to have skin cells from transferred skin cells. Then, as a man, if he decides it's time, he needs to go relieve himself, and he goes, and the only way to do it is to undo your zipper and get it out, urinate, and put it back in. Put it up. In other words, put it up.
Put it up.
Yeah, it's. I know Kay's about dying back there. You go and unmute. You go. It's called transfer, and it's transfer DNA. And that's what Mr. Holtzclaw's position has been from day one. I didn't do it. He didn't do anything sexual with him. The evidence is going to be it's simply just transfer DNA. And again, on all these women, all these other women, they say that he had sex with them and he had sex with one upstairs, and she testifies in the very first report. Oh yeah, he used a rag as soon as we got done, and he ejaculated. Which is
Oh my God.
they could tell that. Trust me, the DNA can tell you if it's a man's semen or not. He ejaculates into a rag and he throws it into the
That
closet.
is not the story. Oh my God.
It's bad.
It's bad.
This is so bad. Such great amounts of innocence.
Oh my God. I feel
inaccurate.
sorry for the people listening to this replay,
I
listening
know.
to us screech every 5
I'm
minutes.
freaking out about it. Sorry,
Well,
everyone.
I mean, I think it's important that these inaccuracies get pointed out, because if you don't, then you have to go back and say, look, when Jack was reading up here on page, 459, this area here or whatever is wrong. I think it may seem inappropriate, but it's to me it's not. To
Well,
point
it's
out
not
these
that- I
inaccuracies.
don't feel like it's inappropriate. It's just frustrating when we know particularly Cherie and Kay and I, and I'm not trying to say nobody else knows anything, but we've read so much and we know
Right.
that is just not the facts.
Well, and
It's
that's
just
Right.
not even
true.
what Rosetta Great said happened.
No.
He
And this
said
Right.
what happened, and he's getting her story messed up.
Yes. The story, the police report does not say that he ejaculated into a rag and throws it in the closet.
No.
He raped her, ejaculated, and then when he was finished, she wiped herself with that towel and she threw it in the closet. So
Right.
this is really bad.
And she wiped something on the back of a chair and on the
Yep.
rail of the bed. And she
Yep.
tells all this convoluted story about
And
where
they
she
didn't find
placed DNA.
And there was no
and
DNA. No.
they didn't find jack shit, did they? They didn't find anything.
Well, I think Galen Gigger explained that to us a couple hours ago, how it was just washed and
all freshly washed,
cleared and disappeared.
Yeah.
Even though didn't Rosetta Gray say that towel should still be in the closet?
Oh yeah, she did.
Oh my gosh, those pictures of the closet gross me out so much.
Yeah, they're rough.
Okay, sorry. This giant pair of men's underwear, tidy whities that would fit. I don't know who to put those on.
Yeah. They were gross. They weren't tidy whities. They were tidy grungy.
I think they would be too big for the dishonorable Timothy Henderson, but
oh boy.
He did like that brand.
He did like tidy whities.
All right. I'll start at line 3. The wrong part again. He ejaculates into a rag and he throws it into the closet. And she tells the detective when she's first interviewed that the room had not been touched since that happened. That rag will still be there, and it will still be there with his semen on it. Immediately, they get a warrant, and they run up there, and they can't find this rag, and that she's described. They're like, wow, what's going on here? We can't find that rag. Well, it must have been discarded. Oh, well, now someone else lives there, so we just can't find any DNA on that. In fact, they can't find any DNA other than that one that we've talked about from the zipper from Transfer.
No one else lived there. What the hell? Will Carter still lived there. He was the only one there when they came with the search warrant. He was pissed. None of that is true. Well, I don't know where this story's coming from.
Well, the part about someone else living there, that comes before Rosetta Great lived there. Some housekeeper or something or other lived there, and I can't remember what her name was. But that's what Rosetta Great said, was that some other, or Willie Carter said it, that there was some other chick there that he had there as a housekeeper or something. I think that's in his testimony somewhere. But anyway.
I actually think that he was living with whoever owned that house, and she died, and then he never left.
That's true.
Living there, but there was a housekeeper, something too.
There was there was some other woman that was coming in and doing house cleaning or something. I'll find it later and show it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I just don't know what to think about Scott Adams. If he was I think he was overwhelmed personally. I don't think he would have come to court after, knocking back a few shots of whatever.
Oh,
no. This is just too much, man. Too much to assimilate.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
No, I don't. I mean,
I get frustrated with the stuff he says, but I also at the same time get why it's so difficult for him to get it all together,
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Okay.
I totally agree. All right, line 16. Then you sit here and you wonder why. First of all, I don't know why. Why they keep coming, why they keep saying this. All I can tell you is what the evidence will be from the stand. The evidence will be that the 13 women that have made allegations against Daniel Holtzclaw, 8 of them have lawyered up and filed lawsuits against the city of Oklahoma City. And then you're also going to hear some of them who haven't yet filed a lawsuit have met with lawyers and talked to lawyers about filing a lawsuit against the city of Oklahoma City and the police department and Daniel Holtzclaw. What I'm going to ask you to do is what you all promised you would do in your voir dire. Just let all the evidence come in before you make a decision. But I will ask this of you, and I can assure you of this. After you've heard all of the evidence you've listened to and everything that everyone has to say, and all the exhibits are in, and all of the stipulations are in. I'm going to ask you to do the only right thing is just thing for Daniel Holtzclaw, and to let him go back home to his family. Thank you, Your Honor.
The court. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Alice. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, that's the. Then it starts in with witnesses, so we're done there.
Wow.
That's rough.
Brutal, man. That's brutal.
It was.
Yeah, that was hard. I don't even know what to say about either one of them, actually, other than, Giger was just flat out lying and or stupid. And Scott Adams just was not well prepared at all.
No.
I can only imagine what that was like sitting in the courtroom, especially for Brian Bates, knowing what his investigation shows. And
he's a really detailed person. He's a really detailed person. I bet he was about to die.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, so that's the opening and closing, or the opening statements of the trial. I didn't look at Janie Liggins yet, but Janie Liggins will be the first witness. And so once we get the money together for her transcript pages, then we can schedule another trial transcript reading and read that for you guys.
If you guys ever wanted to just strictly memorialize this, as we did with Avery and Dassey's trial, I'm glad to help.
That'd be great.
I'm talking about just a straight recording.
Right.
Yeah. Like what you guys, like what was done for, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That way people can just go listen to the various, if you want to do an interactive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And that the thing that is hard about that, I mean, we can do it with each witness, I suppose, or each accuser and their witnesses. We can do that, but we don't have access to all of it, where we can just, knock back a weekend of recording different things like we did with foul play. But
right. I'm just saying as money becomes available and these different, you're able to get a different witness and so forth.
Yeah. And, I mean, for memorialization purposes, if we wanted to, I could even go back and edit so that it's just reading, of course.
That's right. That's right.
Which isn't a bad idea, actually, now that I think about it.
When you run across a word like coabulate.
I've been practicing that word.
Phenolphthalein.
Whatever. Phenolphthalein, whatever that word is. I can't even say that cells word that comes before elliptical or whatever cells. I can't say that one either.
Epithelial.
Kay's always telling me. Yeah, whatever. Shut up, Alice. Nobody was talking to you.
The deal is, Kay, is that we can do that, but there's a rule, and it's the West Coast homies cannot be together. They cannot. They have to be separated.
Right.
I'm talking about Neverly and Rhonda. They cannot reach you.
He is not talking about Rhonda.
The hell I'm not. The hell. We laughed for 20 minutes over that one deal. 20 minutes.
I know. We couldn't stop.
I know.
Well, that's Rhonda.
Me?
Yeah, you always do that.
I can tell you, Neverly was right there with her.
She's still listening. Thank you, homie.
Oh my
God.
Busted job.
I talk about it. Boom, there she is. Our lovely lady Neverly.
Well, first of all, it was late. The words were really difficult. And
they were.
The boob was infuriating.
He was.
And it was tired. We were tired, but we were also on a deadline. We had to get it done that night. It's just
But
bad.
also true. Also true.
In our defense, I got your
And
back, Natalie.
I warned Zoe she's gonna have a time with it. She just laughed. She's so good at that editing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was a good time.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, Natalie. Not at all.
It was a good time. We had a good time.
It was. We did.
All right. Well, that was a little bit of a marathon, and I know that these reading transcript pages are going to be longer. So, she heard everything. She heard your mouth running over there, Jack. She knows. And don't worry, Kay's over here blaming it all on me. So that was Rhonda. Oh, geez.
You're famous for that.
For laughing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe. I have no idea.
For not being able to get your shit together when you start laughing.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah. When she gets the giggle box going, when the giggle box turns on, it's over for at least a while.
It's hard to stop it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Don't even try me. All right, you guys. So we can expect, like I said, these, however we end up doing it, these trial transcripts to be, longer transcripts. So that's why I'm not looking for, likes and subscribes and all that stuff. I appreciate it, of course, and I'm very happy and grateful to have you stay as long as it takes. We really appreciate that. But it's not something that I expect, because I know it's not fun to sit and listen to a bunch of transcripts all the time, especially if it's a case you're not familiar with. So, but this is a good way to get familiar with it, is by checking us out every Thursday night at 5 p.m. Central, and on the Mondays that we can, listening to trial transcripts readings. So we've been a while already, so I don't want to keep us going any longer. Jack, any last things you want to say before we take off tonight?
Excellent stuff, guys. Like I say, just keep it going. This is to me, it's really important to get the nitty gritty of what happened at trial out there as much as we can, however we can. I think the more that know, the more information we can get out, the more people can hear it, understand it, and maybe get involved.
Yes.
Become an advocate themselves.
Yeah.
And get Daniel out.
Yes, that's the main goal for sure.
They screwed that guy every which way, every which way.
Every which way.
Yeah, they didn't leave anything out.
Yep. Okay, Cherie has been silent, but she's been here with us for the last couple of hours. Cherie, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I had to miss the first part, but it was really good to hear it all. I had not read all of this yet, so
yeah,
interesting. Good job.
I hadn't either, and I'm a little disappointed, I must say.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Cherie. Alice, do you have anything you'd like to say before we take off?
Yeah, just thanks for having me on panel. Thank you to everyone in chat. And both chats that came and stuck with us until the end. We know that these can be a bit tedious and a bit bleh, but thank you so much for sticking with us. If you would like to donate to help, there is a room in Daniel's Truth Discord where you could go and help. So please go and have a look at that. Every little bit helps, even if it's just $1. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, panel.
Thank you, Alice. Kay, you get the second to the last word.
So Thursday in Rhonda's YouTube channel, we will be proceeding on through with the timeline, and we are up to Florine Mathis. So we're going to be checking into what the investigators are doing. They're being directed by the brass to, find more victims. So that's exactly what they are doing since they've secured Terry Morris's help. They've got Sherry Ellis on board, and they are just going to steamroll ahead. So it ought to be a good show. Join us at 5 on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Kay. I appreciate that. And so I'll just say until next time, peace out.